Tuesday, December 15th. I'd like to call the meeting of the Harvard Board of Selectmen to order. All present are reminded that this meeting is being taped by the Harvard Cable Committee and may be taped by members of the press or the public. You notice it's pretty dark out there, and the more important thing is sunset is occurring later and later, starting today, even though it's not the shortest day of the year. So the first item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from December 1st, which were presented several days ago by Julie.
I move we accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
I have many comments. I have one comment, Julie, that I think is a deja vu, because I think it happened on a previous minutes. You spelled Jim Breslauer's name incorrectly the first time.
I'll check it.
And the second time you spelled it correctly. I think we did that once before, so.
I'll check. Thank you.
We approve them as amended with a correction. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next item is the town hall update and approval of payment number 7 from GVW. And I see representatives from the building committee here.
Jim?
Good. You, sir?
Good. I'm going to fill in for Laura. Hope I do her justice. So you have the report. There are no substantive changes or any changes to the report. I can offer a little explanation to parts of it. So in terms of the first thing, the project's on track, schedule-wise, budget-wise. We're feeling very comfortable where we are on that. We're about 50% into the budget now, just based, once you approve change orders, not change order, but
The invoice.
7, that'll be 50%, a little over 50%. There's a few things that I think will be done on the outside by the end of the year, pretty much. There may be some painting or other things that have to be done in the spring, but the siding should be up, the roofing is up, and so they're pretty much buttoned up for the winter in this week or next week, I think is done. Well, we'll talk about the lantern a little bit later. In terms of major actions, I want to talk about Town Hall first, and then we'll go to the Hildreth House. So 3 substantive things in the major actions. One is looking at the Juniper Hill report, looking at the design documents, looking at how the building's been renovated, restored, constructed. We're very confident that we have addressed all the major issues that are in that Juniper Hill and envelope assessment report. And that when it's all done, when the building renovation is done, we will be as close as possible to a new building with, current codes, meeting current codes and standards, and we're very pleased with that. And then the third thing, of course, which you're already aware of as a general matter, but it's going to be important to have a well-funded or adequately funded, regularly scheduled maintenance program so we don't have to go through this again. But I think everything is going along very smoothly right now. Friday morning the lantern's going to be put on top of the town hall, so they're getting ready to get that all set up. So
Do you know about what time?
about 8 o'clock, well, between 8 and 9.
Okay.
So I think some people start mobilizing in the early 7 o'clock, 7:30, but I think the crane operation is probably going to be in the 8:30 time frame. Is that right?
Yeah, I think we're aiming for 8:30, and the crane is going to arrive probably before 7 o'clock. I'm going to contact the chief of police and make sure that maybe we have somebody there, because this is a big piece of equipment, and we don't know where they're going to set it up. Depends on what the prevailing winds are that morning. So.
Hope it's not like today.
Pardon?
Is it going up as one piece?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it is?
It was
'Cause
going
there
up
was some talk
permanently.
There was some talk about sections, but it's going up.
Being assembled, probably starting tomorrow, maybe Thursday, it'll be assembled on site,
Oh, okay, great.
and then it goes up as one piece.
And that's kind of the business part. There's also a fun part here, and that is we're going to conduct what's called a topping off, which is a tradition of when you put the highest construction element on a building, you embellish it with a small evergreen or bough or something like that. And this is an old Scandinavian tradition that is supposed to reward the efforts of the people and bless the people that are going to use the building, because now the building has come alive. So we're going to do that. And Ron agreed to take the evergreen that I'm going to give him, or the committee's going to give him, and present it to either George Wattendorf, the president of GBW, if he can make it, or one of their officials. And it is the construction company that affixes the evergreen to the beam. It has to be one of the workers. And the other tradition is that they usually sign their names, all the participants, to the top of the beam or the board. We really can't do that. But there's also another tradition is that you put streamers on it. And we are going to put a streamer on it. And we thought maybe what we should do is have everyone sign the streamer. So if you're not going to be there on Friday morning, I have the streamer and you can sign it now.
I may or may not make it.
You want to sign it now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll sign it now, too.
Strange as it may seem, the streamer is blue and white.
Well,
Please
will
sign the
this-
white one.
will a regular ballpoint work on this?
You want a
I have
Sharpie?
a special
Or a
pen for you
Sharpie?
right here. Use this pen.
It looks a lot like mine.
And while that fun stuff is going on, we'll jump over to the Hildreth House,
Well, why don't we finish this and that's a separate?
the signing.
Well, we'll do the signing. I think we have to approve the payment.
Oh, no, I'm just giving you an update on the Hildreth House.
Okay, all right, go
We
ahead.
can do whatever you
All right,
want.
go ahead and do that.
The Hildreth House, so, as you know, the committee recommended design architect with LLB. You've approved them on December 16th, and they're going to have their construction documents, design documents ready to go out to bid in March of 2016. So I think we're a little bit slower than we were hoping, but it's about the best we can do right now. But March of 2016, and I don't think it's going to really be I don't think anybody on our committee thinks that's going to be a substantive issue. We're hoping, I think, in the January, February, have to bid, but March, best they can
Yeah,
do.
because the concern would be they're a little late in getting contractors at the
Yeah,
start of
the
their season.
Vertex, the OPM, didn't think this was really going to be an issue for us.
Okay, okay.
If I could just make a comment on that, I think it's, it was great with the town hall that we got the things out to bid considerably earlier. I'm a little concerned about Hildreth House being a smaller bid, it may not attract quite as many folks, and I hope you guys, I just think it's disappointing it's taken so long, but it is what it is. And I just hope you guys, I think you were creative when you put the bid out for the town hall, thinking about how to structure it so that you'd make sure you captured a winning bid. And I hope you're equally creative here under the circumstances, given that it's going to be even later in the building season.
Yeah, we're very concerned that we want to make sure we have a bid that goes, an acceptable bid.
We're
Yeah,
gonna go over the cost estimates. They come in, just like we did with the town hall. And we're gonna look for anything that will affect the bottom line, because we want a valid bid. We're gonna do a rerun on this.
right. No, I think you did a great job with the town hall. I assume that'll be coming back to this group at some, before it goes out to bid?
I'm sorry?
Will that, I assume
the
the
bid
bid package,
documents?
the bid documents will come back here anyway, so we'll get to see,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
see your
yeah.
work there. Good, good. No, I'm just, anyway, good to hear.
On the subject of that, before we go to approve, this is an issue that I want to bring, I don't want to take too much time, but I just want to start it tonight, start your thinking on it, and we can deal with it later. This came out of the Town Center Traffic Committee, when we were looking at parking in the entire town center. I'm going to give you each a copy. If you pass, see, two on this side. And three 3 on this. Oh, here we go.
You can share.
How many do you have? You need one more? There you go.
Oh. Sorry. You know.
Okay, what this is the, as you can see, the Hildreth House, and this is the parking that was done in the preliminary design by GPR. GPR is going to be, of course, if you approve, LLB, are going to be the civil engineers on the actual project. What came up in the traffic, in the town center traffic committee was, if you see the parking on the left around that circle, there are 6 parking places there. They were, and we also had Rich Noda go up and look at that site. And the feeling is that we could, at the same time that we're doing in this project, the parking up that's in the program, up by the Hildreth House, we could design parking down there that would add somewheres at least 15, maybe 20 parking lots, spaces. The problem with that is that if we ask the designer to look at that in order to get the cost, we actually have to pay him to do that. That might not be a big item. Our thoughts are, if this has merit, that we could possibly do it as an ad alternative on the bid, just like we did with the lantern and the windows. There is, of course, an overall plan for parking around the town hall and everything. That plan has been drawn up. But the feeling at the traffic group was it may be 3 or 4 years before that happens. Meanwhile, town hall is going to finish on the 21st of April. The Hildreth House is going to be finished probably, I don't know, 6, 7 months later. So we're going to need that parking now, not 4 years from now. This is not a permanent solution, but this may be a very good temporary parking. So you think about it.
Is this envisioned as being head-on instead of parallel?
Just
How are you getting?
that red line follows the contours, so we don't have to do any blasting or in other words, it would just be fill. How the parking spaces would be laid out in there would be done by a civil engineer looking at the area.
Okay, because it's.
The consultants from that the traffic group was looking at estimated that we should get at least 15 and maybe 20 parking spaces in there. How they were configured,
Okay,
they'll figure it out.
because they were planning on maybe 6 parallel along the edge of the driveways.
I mean, there's a second problem there, is as you come up the drive, and you have that oval, that turnaround, some people that don't know, haven't been to Hillville, don't know which way to go, whether to go up the hill or go around that circle. That circle contains one lonely tree.
It's the tree in the trail.
I think we can sacrifice. But anyway, here's what I'd like you guys to do, if you would. Think about this. I think maybe by the second meeting in January, we should know whether you look on this favorably, because as we're doing the design, when we get to that, we can then have the designer give us a cost of what the cost would be of doing this larger parking lot.
Ken?
So you said, instead of the 6 that were in the original plan, this may yield around 15? Was that the number you mentioned?
He said a minimum of 15. He said you actually could expect 20.
And is the idea that this would serve the town hall, Hildreth House, or both?
Both, actually, because it's halfway up.
Okay, thank you.
Now, this isn't intended to be a permanent solution, but it's one that we should probably take advantage, because the permanent solution, it may be 4 years away. On the other hand, whatever we configure up there on the Hildreth land, we may end up keeping this park.
No, I think it'll end up being used.
Right. I have that plan too, Bruce. But anyway, think about it.
So help me understand, you're asking to spend extra money to design the spaces or to put it, to go?
There's
go-
two steps to it, Ron. The first is, we'll get kind of an estimate and what it would cost just to get the costs. So then they would lay it out, just like they laid out preliminary design for the parking that's in front of Hildreth House. The designer would lay that out, and we'd get an estimated cost on it. Based on that, then, and we will probably have that for you before the second meeting in January. Based on that, then we would have to take a look at, is the cost, do we want to put the cost in the bid? If we do, we get a little nervous because we want to protect that bottom line. So we may want to do it as an ad alternative. On the other hand, depending on what those costs are, your board may want to make those funds available.
For the design, to put it as an ad alternate.
Yeah.
I have a question on the parking, and I only have this sketch, but there's talk about putting some housing in the back lot. I don't know if it could be possible to show that on a subsequent version of this, is where the access road would go.
The access road, one of the plans, the access road would actually go right through this parking lot.
Right through.
This, where the circle is,
Proposed parking lot.
where the proposed parking lot is, yeah.
Okay. Which would then cut a little bit out of the,
Well, you can't do it piecemeal. In other words, if you're gonna develop the rest of the parcel, I don't think where this is, if you notice, it's right next to the firehouse.
okay.
So it all depends on how access is going to be to the land that is going to have the housing. You could access it by a road going around or come up through here. This plan, you could you may have to access over here. On the other hand, you could access by going around Hildreth House. This is often the miss of time, we really don't know.
I think one idea also is just following this contour.
That's the one I'm talking
Oh,
about.
okay.
That's what
It's
this does.
little
It follows
leg
that
here that it
contour.
would continue on, because there's a pretty level area there.
And this is one of those situations that we're going to be working in that area. We're going to be creating parking in front of the Hildreth House. We have an opportunity to create some parking halfway down, knowing that this may not be the permanent solution, but it certainly is something we may need before we get the permanent solution. Bearing in mind that we're going to have a large room in the new town hall that's ADA accessible, that's going to have events. I don't know how many events, none of us really know. But if an event does happen there, we're talking a capacity of what, 140, 170 people. A good comparison would be when the firemen have their raffle. People are parking all over the place. You have to. Connie was thinking that even the parking, what was the parking that is in the plan, 16, 20?
20 up top.
20 up top.
6 around.
Okay, so the planned parking is the 20 plus these 6 marginal ones down here. Now, with an improved Hildreth House, you're gonna get more demand for parking up there. So it does serve as a temporary additional parking for Hildreth, and also because of its location, a temporary parking for the town hall. I don't think the two events would compete, but you can't really tell. But anyway, think about it, and when we come back to give you the January report, we can talk about it further.
Okay. All right. We have an action item.
We have two.
Two motions.
Okay, now back to our regularly scheduled program.
So I think we're done. I'll answer your questions if you have any more, but there's a budget item that needs to be approved.
We need to approve the payment, and I thought we had to
Excuse me.
approve
Leo?
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
LLB.
Why isn't the siding on the gable end?
We're expecting the siding to be all done this week. That was-
Really?
Yes.
Some of the siding was left off because there was still, what were they, they had something they had to get into.
Oh, they were doing the trim around the windows. They were redoing the trim around the windows
It
before they put those in.
I asked that same question, because it seemed they had all the siding and they left one out here, and other, they left it out. There evidently is a,
Where the scaffolding was,
oh yeah, that's the other thing. Where the scaffolding was, it was bolted to the
Right.
end of the frame. So they left that out, and then they had to go back and put that in.
Okay.
they're installing it using the lift that they have.
Below, yeah.
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 Luckily, the weather has been
Yeah.
fantastic. for
Well, that's,
painting.
I thought they would have rock and rolled on that, because when we did that tour, I looked at it, and said they're 3 days away from being done with this gable end, and it's been blue since then, so.
Yeah, well,
I think they might be adjusting what they do based on the weather too, looking at the forecast when, knowing they still have a few more days.
They had the northeast and they had the north and the northwest side done, and they had a blue patch on the north side, on the northeast side to finish, and then they still have the south side of the building to finish.
So they're not gonna paint it then until the spring? And they just put the siding up with
being
prime?
painted right now.
Oh, they're actually out there painting?
I think the east side was painted.
The east
They may
side's
do the
pretty
west
close.
No, the
side
two
in the
sides were
spring.
painted.
Depends on the weather.
Yeah, I mean, the weather's getting awful late here.
Yeah, it's still awful
40
warm.
40 degrees, they can't paint if it's gonna be 40 degrees within 3 hours.
The east side was painted twice. The issue is, when it comes to springtime, they're going to be washing this building down, and they're going to add another coat to the east side, and then they will finish the other sides.
Okay. We have a couple action
Right,
items.
well, first, we need to approve the invoice from GVW.
Yes. Can I get a motion for
I
that?
move we approve the invoice in the amount of $272,350.75.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And then, don't we have to approve LLB as the
Yeah.
architect?
And, Lucy, hang on, one thing at a time. Okay, second item is to,
I move we accept the proposal of LLB to be the architect for the Hildreth House, Phase 1.
do I hear a second? Second. Any discussion or questions?
Question, just a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, what was budgeted? I
Oh.
know what the cost is, what was budgeted?
The original amount, back when the estimate was done, was 128,500.
Right.
Okay, so this is within a few dollars of that, 130,000. Okay, yep.
And I do have a question. I read through there. We feel confident we can make the date March 2016. That's what they say. How do you guys feel about that? Will they make the date or?
They'll make the date.
Okay, all righty. Seeing any other questions or comments? All those in favor of
Aye.
appointing LLB as architect for the Hildreth House?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next item on the agenda is annual license renewals. And we have a page that Julie presented us. And I assume that all the paperwork is in, or they wouldn't be on the list, Julie? Whatever they're supposed to give
There's
you.
a few of the licensees that haven't, all the liquor stuff is in. Everybody
Okay.
sent everything in that they need to. There's a few people, Sorrento's, Dunkin' Donuts, Westwood Orchards, and Shaker Hills Country Club, who haven't sent back their common vic paperwork, but I'll follow up with them and make sure that they get it. But everybody else has. I checked with the Board of Health, all the food establishments are in good standing. I checked with the police chief, no issues with entertainment licenses or liquor. All taxes are paid, so I think everybody is in good shape for renewal.
So am I hearing that you would like us to approve
And sign.
all of them, or you, won't be
I-
till next year that we do the common vic licenses?
About, I move we approve the licenses as presented, subject to Sorrento's, Dunkin' Donuts, Westwood Orchards, and Shaker Hills completing the necessary paperwork.
Is that all of them, Julie?
Yeah.
Can I get a
Second
second?
that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Then, Lucy, that included the liquor licenses.
Go this way?
Yeah.
She said all the liquor license, yeah,
Yeah,
all the
all-
licenses is presented, but she said all the liquor licenses were complete.
Now, on the liquor, you have to sign the license and the renewal sheet underneath for the ABCC. Okay, so there's 5 liquors. Yeah, and then these
you-
are all the other licenses, just go through and sign away, everything's in there, entertainment license,
Could do it the other way.
Okay, why don't we go around and do the signing?
Do you want to start those this way,
Yeah, I was
Liz?
gonna hand them over.
Thank you.
You'll fill in the date, Julie?
Yep. Just sign.
I see 2 men from the pond committee here, and if you would like to come in a little early, and I'll get you out of the way. So, Peter, why don't you come up to the table if you're ready?
How are you, sir?
I see you brought reinforcements. Do you need them?
Well, if they want to chime in.
No, I guess not.
I guess not. I just do want to make sure that everybody has our response from Lorraine. We do.
What was the response from Lorraine? Oh, okay.
No, to Lorraine, our response to Lorraine.
This silly paper clips catch up.
No, we haven't even really, we haven't started.
Oh, Bruce, I thought you,
You just walked in.
How are you?
sorry.
You got it. This one up here? Another whack at
2
this one?
places on this we gotta sign.
Yeah, that,
I think we're good.
Yeah, okay, all right.
that's it, yeah.
They're all about the pond, right?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to
This is a
rush you.
short one, right?
I'm trying to rush you through because your good wife told me that you had to be somewhere else, so. Shh.
Make him wait.
Got inside joke.
She has what
I know, she scheduled me.
So go ahead, Peter.
We circulated a response through Lorraine regarding the town's request for what our funds were, what they were originally allocated for. Do you want to read that? Is that our response? Sure. Response to your question about what the $52,000 on account, on our project accounts represents. It's a funding received under the pump station and stormwater grants that is restricted to use under the scope of the grant agreements to protect the watershed by maintaining the pump house and the stormwater control rain gardens. A significant question at the time we entered into the grants was whether the committee would be committing the town to future unbudgeted capital expenses. For this reason, we have largely planned to use the account as a reserve for future capital and maintenance expenses that might not be within our routine budgets. For example, if there was a need to replace the pump engine
or the pump drive system after 10 to 15 years, it would require removing the roof of the pump house. And the pump house is designed for that. Bringing in a contractor to lift it out and repair and replace it. That could cost $25,000 or more, depending on parts and labor. If the pump itself is broke, which is unlikely, that could cost another $10,000 to $15,000. In addition, if the stormwater basins require significant excavation or repair after an unusual storm event, that could cost $5,000 to $10,000. We think it is prudent to hold these funds in reserve for their intended purpose, and we're pleased that we were able to obtain grant funding that could protect against our future capital needs.
So that was in reference to using was it $52,000?
For the,
It was in the funding list that we got.
It's in the funding, was to talk about using it to add to this runoff protection on Pond Road that the water department's looking at, which would protect the wells and would also protect water going into the pond with the low water separator. That
wasn't the question we received.
yeah.
wasn't the question you received?
The question we got was, what was the $52,000?
Okay.
So maybe you can tell us about that.
Yeah. Exactly.
The Water Commission was looking at ways of protecting the two wells on Pond Road. And there's a stream that runs down Warren Avenue, or I guess it runs under Pond Road, and it runs along a rock fracture into the pond.
Mm-hmm.
And the water that comes down there has salts and
The one that's
sediment.
still left in the stream.
Yeah.
That was the water, and trace that back, that's the water that runs essentially off of Warren Avenue on the paved part.
Yeah.
And then there's a home about 3 or 4 doors up that has a stream running through it, and then down a creek, and then through the yards there, and then comes out. And that stream probably begins up on, if I remember correctly, up on Bolton Road. Yeah.
So the thought was to kind of use those funds for solving an issue with the water getting contaminated from that. The water goes in a rock fracture and it gets down into the well, so there's extra sedimentation in one of the wells, and the DPW tells me that they're having to mix the water
Mm-hmm.
to keep the
Salt
total.
level down.
Do they actually know the salt's coming out of the stream?
I think, I don't know where, my guess is the salt's coming from Mass Ave. We have limited control over that.
Anyway, that's kind of new information to me, at least. But we would want to take that back to the committee for sure, but
Yeah, they have a $69,000 request right now in front of the capital committee. They were just with us on Monday of this week. And I guess the idea is to divert the water before it goes down the well, because the salt's building up in the well, and get it past the well. They'll also be separating out any gasoline or anything. If there was ever a spill of, gas or something in the road, that could be separated out before it hit either the well or the pond.
because what would make sense, and I'm just hearing about this really for the first time, what would make sense is that's exactly what the 319 grant program is for. And rather than deplete the reserves, it would be a perfect grant application for the Water Commission to submit to get the funding like we got.
Think we'd have a good shot at it?
I think you have a great shot at it. We have a great record with them from the work we did before. And-
$69,000.
And it would be, and it would be something that, then you could contribute some matching funds or whatever to it.
Through the you've used DPW
Yeah,
for as part of it. So I wanted clarity also, Peter, when you were reading about the purpose of the grant with that 52,000, because you have to be careful about the purpose of a grant and how you're using the funds. You don't want to run afoul of the intent. So you kept making reference to the pump
Well,
facility.
there were 2 grants, so there are 2 grants we had. There was one grant which was to build the pump house, to do the drawdowns, and the other grant was to build the stormwater, and the money is a result of both of them.
Okay, so it's not just from one grant. I thought
That's
it was
right.
from one grant. Oh, so the other
Well-
was for the,
For the storm.
Right. We
basins.
just mentioned the pump house being huge capital
right.
expense that would require maintenance.
Yeah, they were follow-on grants to one another. But we could certainly provide some advice and assist, I don't think we could be the lead on the grant application, but we could certainly help, whoever in town does that. I don't think it would be a complicated grant application, because it sounds like they have a proposal.
They have a lot of data, yeah.
So I think the takeaway is that, starting with getting everybody together, starting with the DPW director, Tim, and the Water Commission, and with you guys, and figure out how we.
To do that.
Yeah.
Because there's no reason not to get the grant funding.
Sounds great. Great idea.
That's why we all meet and talk face to face.
It might not it would at least cover 60% of it.
It's better than 100% from the town funds.
And the timing, I don't know what the timing, I don't recall what the timing cycle is, but I think we're ahead of the timing cycle.
Sounds perfect. I mean, Rich was just in on Monday, and he's all up to speed in it. He was gonna do a lot of the work on it. He's got all the estimates.
What I will say is Rich has really stepped up this year in coordinating maintenance of the pump house with us. We had what looked like lightning events last year, which required some pretty significant, I mean, not very expensive at the end of the day, but some significant electrical repairs, and he really was helpful, and he's been operating the pump house this year. We trained them on that, and they're doing a really nice job.
Anybody have any questions on their budget? We're okay with sending it on the finance committee as is.
Have we had anybody, an outside contractor, look at it at all, or
At the,
at the problem with the well? Has there been an outside engineering firm that's looked at it, or?
They have some, they're lucky to have some very skilled people on the, in fact, one of them was just here, but he just left, on the study committee. And,
Okay.
They really have, it certainly sound like they know what they're talking about, let's put it that way. So I would follow up with them.
We have a hydrogeologist.
Kyle
and
Hedrick.
They have some skills.
And so I'm just trying to recall, the amount you've put in for purchased services is for the monitoring that the Concom has asked for?
a significant amount of it is for monitoring,
Okay.
for electricity. A significant amount is for electricity.
Okay.
And then for the kinds of repairs we had this year, then it could be
Okay.
$3,000.
Does it cover any cost of monitoring too?
Yeah, it's all the
Okay.
monitoring. Yeah, we do a lot more professional monitoring now under the last couple of orders of conditions.
The appropriation account, probably about 13,000, I think we budgeted for it.
Okay. Right, no,
I think, Bruce, you all deserve some recognition for the operation, the way the system operates that you provided to the DPW and the way you operate the pump. I think the first year, I could have the numbers wrong, used $26,000 worth of electricity.
It was $13,000 the first year.
Yeah.
Well, I exaggerate, but
And it's now, well, we'll see what it is this
Yeah.
year, because we're having warm weather and rain, but last year it was like 6 or 7. Because we've been timing the gravity drawdown to optimize as much as we can with we've learned how to optimize the gravity to minimize the electricity, and it's actually cut it in half.
That's great.
Well,
anybody?
Ron's had you cut it in half anyway, because he was at 26 when you were at 13. so.
He's just trying to make us look.
Sorry.
But it's also, and we didn't really know how to do it when we started, and we learned.
Great.
Good.
We all set?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Since you did you want a cookie before you go? You did it.
I just had a great dinner.
All right.
Thank you. Thank
Been
you.
eating
Good
that stuff all
presentations,
day
I'll get a
long.
cookie. All right.
That was the first one.
We'll move back to public communication. I'm sorry if somebody was here expecting to start at 7:30. I needed to get Peter out on time, or I would be in trouble with the chair of the finance committee.
Good evening. Worth Robbins, Mass Ave. I would like to summarize an email sent to the board last week about a citizen's petition to elect a charter commission. When I heard that Selectmen had asked Town Administrator Bregan to put a group together to consider moving to the town manager form of government, I thought there might be a better way, so I checked it out. I quickly learned that a 1966 amendment to the Massachusetts Constitution provided a comprehensive process by which a city or town could establish or modify its charter. Since enactment of the so-called Home Rule Amendment, 130 charter commissions have been elected, and nearly 90 cities and towns have adopted charters by this approach. Process is initiated by a signature petition requiring 15% of registered voters. For Harvard, this would be 626. Once signatures have been certified, the Board of Selectmen orders the question to be put on the next town election ballot, and at that election, if the question of framing a charter passes, 9 residents are elected to a charter commission, responsible to draft the charter with an 18-month deadline. With the next town election scheduled for April 12th, and knowing the vote to put the question on the ballot must be made at least 60 days before, or in other words, about February 12th, and allowing for time to certify signatures and for selectmen to schedule the vote, it would have been necessary to collect the 626 signatures by December 31st to guarantee it could be put on the ballot. We took the necessary first step of requesting blank petition forms, which we received last Thursday. I have a stack of them. But we don't believe there's enough time to get the word out, explain how the process would work, and gather the signatures in the next 2 weeks. It might be possible in a month. If everyone agreed the elected charter commission would be a good way to go about reviewing and modifying Harvard's government structure, we could probably put together an information session in early January and mount the petition drive in time to have certified signatures by late January. If the board, if you folks were already prepared to take the action of putting the question on the ballot, the 60 days before election deadline could be met, candidates for the commission could be nominated, and the April election could be the start of a comprehensive analysis and modification of Harvard's government structure. A charter commission is not necessarily in conflict with the working group. One of the reasons we decided to slow down a little bit was we didn't want it to be seen as somehow competitive with or antagonistic to the work that you've already initiated. It might be feasible to move to town manager on a town meeting vote enacted by a special act of the legislature and have the newly appointed town manager working with the newly elected charter commission to figure out the rest of the changes that might be needed. I've already met with or spoken with some of the working group. I met with Rick Maori this morning, and I spoke previously with Victor Normand and Bob Eubank. I don't want to speak for them, but I found some openness to the idea of the Charter Commission, especially as they considered whether all the changes that may be needed could be figured out by a small group in a short time. I've provided a number of resources in the email, and I've also set up a website where they're available for people to download and read. One of the ones I found that I thought was particularly informative was the charter done by the town of Hopkinton in 2006. And I obviously can't read the entire charter to you tonight, but I think a few of the comments within the first introductory pages give you an idea of how the process might work. One comment in the opening paragraph says, "The members of the Charter Commission believe adoption of this charter will significantly improve our town's governmental structure and its ability to deal with contemporary problems both on a day-to-day and long-range basis." The next paragraph has a statement, "We confirm a view long held by many that Hopkinton has been and is fortunate to have an outstanding group of men and women serving in its elected and appointed town positions." This sounds like a very collaborative, constructive process, not a process of antagonism and competition. And finally, the last page of the introduction has a statement: this charter provides a governmental structure that has better defined administrative coordination, an improved financial process, and more built-in accountability. Wow, that sounds pretty good. We also acknowledge that the vast majority of townspeople desire to continue conducting legislative affairs in an open town meeting. So despite the fact that there's a range of possibilities, including going to representative town meeting, there's also the possibility of keeping things more or less the way they are and just dealing with the things that need to be changed. So I think in sort of a summation of what I would hope could happen is that if we could all come to the conclusion that the elected charter commission would be a good way to go, we could, as I say, put an information session together in early January, mount the petition drive. I don't think it'll be hard to get 600 signatures given a month or so to do it. And I think if you're ready to put the vote, to put it on the ballot by February 12th, I think there's a timeline that would work to get us there, and I would hope that that would be something that you would consider favorably. Thank you.
If my colleagues had let me make a comment from what we had a meeting this morning, and we did discuss this, and I'll just say a couple things, and if you want, I'll put it on the agenda for the board to discuss at our next meeting. But what our working group was looking at was not major changes to the town's form of government. We're looking at a few incremental changes to improve the efficiency. The charter process has been discussed, and it would be a follow-on after the incremental changes were made. And one of the things that kind of got us focused in on is we had Julie Jacobson, who's the town manager from Auburn, come in. Very impressive person, and she pretty much said you got to lay the groundwork of why you need the charter, and well before you even start daylighting it. That was an important thing. If you looked at how the town of Auburn was organized, they were very bad. You know, Harvard is pretty good compared to what that town started with. The other thing we discussed is the Board of Selectmen has instituted operational reviews of our major departments. We're already in the middle of doing one with the Department of Public Works by the UMass, the Collins Institute. Next year, assuming town meeting gives us the funds, we're going to do an operational review of the fire and ambulance service, and the following year we'll do the police service. One of the discussion items that came up was maybe we should see what comes out of that before we really go whole hog. And the last thing about a charter is it's something you have to get right, because it's hard to get it, and once you get it, it's hard to change it. So to summarize, I mean, if you think about it and let me know, and I'll put it on the agenda for you, and we'll talk about it. But that's kind of where I thought we were at. So it's obviously it's not totally my call, and you know we can talk about it at the next meeting in more detail if you want us to, Wentworth, if that's acceptable to you.
Well, and you don't need permission from me. I mean.
No. If you I understand that, but if you feel it's something that the board should, I don't want to discuss it tonight. It's not on our agenda. If you feel it's that important to after what I told you, I'll ask my colleagues to discuss it. If you say, hey, what you're doing is fine, and I'll talk more with you offline about what we're doing, we'll leave it like it is.
I would encourage a couple of things. One, I would encourage looking at a few more towns, because I'm not sure Auburn or Townsend are good analogs to Harvard. Fortunately, there's a very close-by town that I think we all think is pretty well operating, and that's Acton. Acton passed their charter in 1982, and they've gone through almost 30 years of amendment as they've adapted it and brought it along to changing circumstances. So I think talking to that town would be useful. And I'd talk to Hopkinton. I mean, I think the fact that they've gone through it recently, that it seems as though it was a pretty positive process, might help provide a little more range of perspective on whether it's a good thing or a bad thing to undertake. A lot of the things, the kind of reviews you're talking about, might well be done within the structure of a charter commission. It's not a rush thing. They have 18 months to get it done, so it can be done in a very deliberate way.
I think if I just want clarity with your invitation for them to come back in January. I think what I heard from Worth is if he's proposing it be on the ballot for this town election in April, if the selectmen haven't indicated tonight an interest in pursuing this, he has the option of collecting all the signatures he needs by the end of December and having them certified, and then by petition, it would come on to the next town election, correct? Is that right?
Yeah, the hard deadline is the vote to put it on the ballot has to occur 60 days or more before the election, and that's a decision by the board. The board has no choice but to put it on the next election within 30 days of the signatures being certified. So that's what leads us back to the December 31st deadline. Personally, I don't think that's a good idea, for the reason that I think people would be signing without really knowing what they were signing for.
And that was the thing that Julie Jacobson cautioned us about, laying the groundwork for the change. And,
right.
And quite frankly, I having worked on the group, I don't see the groundwork there. But I think that's something that maybe the next meeting, the selectmen could, if we want, discuss it in further detail. Does that make, you wanted to add to that, Tim? You were there this morning.
No, the group is going to be finishing up its work and providing you with a report per your request for the second meeting in January. So,
Any possibility it would be sooner?
no. We have other people coming in.
Okay, well, I guess it would be something for us to consider. I think I've mentioned in the past, in my work on the master plan, there's been some discussion on the capacity of the town as it is right now for managing its affairs. The number, I think Leo's raised, is the number of committees we have. Do we have too many? Should they be consolidated? Having adequate professional support for committees so that you can attract people to continue to serve. All these things, and I recall, I believe it was in the 90s when Pat Graninger's group did that overall analysis, and we changed a lot of the finance department, who was elected, who was appointed, et cetera. So there is some value in taking a more comprehensive look.
And that's what we talked about this morning, was we weren't ruling out going the charter route. It's just the timing of it. And I think it's...
So I'd like to have it on our agenda, I guess, in January, first meeting in January.
So I have two comments. One is, if we're going to get this far into the weeds on something, I think it needs to be on the agenda. This is all new to me.
Yeah.
All of this. We talked about maybe changing from a town administrator to a town manager, and this board took action to look into that. That was the entire scope of what I agreed to at the time. Had I been asked to agree to something else, I might have viewed it differently. I don't know. This sounds like it might be a good idea, but it also sounds to me like it has to be a very deliberate process, and it could take some time. And one of the things we do in Harvard is we get all these ideas and we all want to run down and do them all at the same time, and we often don't get them right. So as a member of the board, I gotta tell you, getting this far into the weeds on something that's not on the agenda troubles me.
Yeah,
I'd
that's
rather
why I
not.
suggest
I'd rather
That's
not
why I
do.
asked to have it on our agenda.
I'd rather not that not happen again. And that said, I think there might be some merit here, but the time frame would worry me a lot.
Okay. So we'll discuss it next meeting.
Okay.
Anybody else?
What's our meeting, the 5th?
Billy Salter, Elm Street. I guess I have two things to say. One, Worth is so organized. I mean, isn't that something? Two is about this building, the old library. I was and am really concerned with what I perceive, perhaps ironically, given Leo's just completed comments, about the haste with which the Board of Selectmen seems to be proceeding to want to rid the town of the obligation of taking care of this building. I think it's completely inappropriate to get rid of this building, for the town to do so. Leasing it to the Cultural Council might make sense, I don't know. With a lease, you can see if it works out. But getting rid of it because it costs money is really not, I think, not appropriate. It's not an appropriate way to care for the legacy and the assets of this town, even though it's going to cost money. Even though it's going to cost more money now than the earlier times when we failed to make changes that we were told we had to make and bring the building up to code. I think this is a very big deal. What I was struck by what I perceived to be the suddenness of the notion of selling it for $1 or $300K. I'm a little confused about those two numbers. But aside from the suddenness, I think the idea is completely inappropriate. Whether it's a cultural council, I don't know if that's the right term, which seems okay to me, or something else, this is, always has been, and should remain a town building.
Anyone else? Okay, moving on. Town Administrator report.
I'm sorry, were you asking if there are more people in the public discussion that would like
Yes.
to speak?
Yes.
I'm Connie Larrabee, under Pin Hill Road. I believe that you're going to discuss the Phase 2 of the Hildreth House project later on and talk about possibly reviewing your decision to take it off the 5-year plan. And I'm just here to urge you to reconsider that decision and to get it back on the 5-year plan. And to let you know that today, or this week, the Council on Aging received 2 very generous contributions totaling $7,000 for new appliances and a rehab of the kitchen. That work is part of Phase 2, and so there is money being raised, or it isn't even being raised, it's just being contributed. Both of these contributions were from senior citizens who use the building and who know how much we need this continued improvement of that facility. So please consider that when you have this discussion later. Thank you.
Was that gift to the Friends of the COA or to the COA?
One of them was to the Friends and one to the COA, $5,000 to the Friends and $2,000 to the COA.
Okay, thanks.
Good evening. My name is Jared Wollaston. I live at 1 Elm Street in that other very, 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 very old building here, brick building on the town common. I do believe that the best use for this building is to be a cultural center. Based upon my experience, my 40 years of building restoration design, development and being a member of the Boston Zoning Commission for the last 4 years, overseeing over $14.5 billion of building and construction and dealing with ADA accessibility. I do believe that this building is appropriately a historic building that should be retrofitted, and I strongly suggest, based upon my experience, that this building should be, that you should enter into lease negotiations, reasonable lease negotiations with this well-established HCC, and then work together to comply under the U.S. Department of Justice Civil Rights Division ADA compliance. If the ADA compliance cost anywhere from $100,000 to $300,000, under the 2010 census, our town has 1,809 households. If you spread that over those 1,809 households, that comes to about $55 per household. If any of you have ever experienced having a family member have a disability and having access to the buildings, my father, at age 87, was a very active person, and he worked under the Truman administration to develop a lot of these initial veterans benefits, and he saw the disgrace with which our government treated people with disability, and he had a career in that. But at 87, he lost a leg, and that threw us some disease, and he became disabled, and it was excruciatingly embarrassing for us to go to various places where there wasn't appropriate access. So I think it is the right of this body, the Selectmen, to embrace the historic relevance of this building and the Hapgood Trust and the Sawyer family, and the purpose for which the intellectual pursuits of our town will pursue not only for this generation, for generations to come. I hope you embrace the idea that we can work together. And there are guidelines, the American with Disability Act, ADA guidelines for small towns. As a small town and a municipality, you can work with the ADA and have certain benefits that private ownership could not have. And if the HCC, you force them to try to buy this building for an unreasonable sum of $1, they would be confronted with very different zoning regulations and building codes. So I encourage you to vote now, and let's get going and let this HCC move forward. It's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Susan Guswa, Old Meadow Lane. I'd like to piggyback what Connie has just said. Please make sure that the second phase for the improvements of Hildreth House continues to be on the list, the to-do list. Our senior population continues to grow. It's going to continue right through to 2050 before it starts to even level off. This is not the time to drop the ball on phase 2. We need a senior center. We need a senior center that provides services for an increasing population of seniors. Thank you.
Anyone else? No takers in the public session. Town administrator report. Tim.
I'll start off. Ken, since the fiber is under mine too, do you want to do your piece? You all received a document from Mr. Swanton regarding fiber contract. We are still working with Charter. We're working with Charter Spectrum Business right now, and going through some details of what it would look like and where it would be and what the cost would be for Charter to do it. Once that's done, then Tom Cohen and I will be sitting down again to finalize the negotiations on the agreement. And we expect that that will be finalized sometime between now and mid-January, and then the construction would start in March. Plenty of time for us moving back in May to this building, to the newly renovated building.
So you're anticipating Charter will provide it?
No, we're working with Charter right now. This is a step that we had agreed to go through with Tom Cohen and Charter. And once that is finalized, then Tom and I will get back together and we will finish our negotiations.
So the timetable then is mid-January. You expect to be done with the charter contract, And then by the end of March, there's time then to get the installer to do the job.
Correct.
Good, good. I just asked that this be on just because it came up last meeting, and it's double-checked with some of the folks who are looking at the installation of AV equipment in the town hall, and it's just important we hold the schedule, or else the cost may go up on the other side. So I'm delighted to hear the schedule is looking good for mid-January, and I look forward to the mid-January Selectmen's meeting. You can tell us that's behind us.
Yes, and the issue there is that the first leg of the whole project would be between town hall and the school.
Right, that's the critical leg that
That's
we
the
need for
critical
the
leg.
town hall.
Correct.
To turn the town hall on.
There are multiple legs in the project, but that's the critical leg.
Great.
We receive on a as-needed basis, major events from the Harvard Unitarian Universalists. If you remember correctly, a few years ago, there was an agreement made. I want to let you know that you've been continuing that agreement. Month of December is usually busy. They have two big events, the 20th, 24th, and that there'll be a lot of cars parked around, and they've notified everybody. So the other item there is that, since we're talking about around the common, this past weekend, you all noticed that the tree lighting ceremony occurred, and on Monday, we received many favorable comments from people within the public regarding the tree lighting and the tree. I can't thank everybody involved enough who helped put that together and get that done. It was a real community event, and it came off, and I believe everybody is pleased, or most everybody is pleased. I won't say everyone. Most everyone is pleased with the way it came out.
It was great. I was there, it was great.
Yeah.
I think the fire department did a great job.
Yeah.
Tough tree to decorate.
Yeah, getting tall.
I said
Can't grow anymore.
It was windy.
Yeah.
Poor Bill Barton got slapped in the face by the top of the tree many times.
I saved the biggest item for last. That is, the free cash number has been certified by the Department of Revenue for the town of Harvard, and the amount of free cash that the town has certified is $1.36 million. The breakdown of the $1.36 million is $500,000 of the fund came in through tax title and taxes that were overdue, and those collections came in higher. And then once we move property off the due and move it into tax title, that money comes off of your receivables. It's put into a separate category. It is still a receivable, but you now have a security against that within tax title, which is a legal process that they go through. So between those two, taking it off of the receivable portion of the account and the back taxes that we collected, that was about $500,000 on its own. With that, though, there was about $125,000 in fees and fines that went along with those taxes that were collected, and those go into local receipts. Our excise local receipt came in quite a bit higher, over $100,000 higher than we anticipated as well. The amounts of money that we received over what we estimated last year was approximately $400,000. And then finally, we closed out approximately $400,000 in budgets, which is approximately, we usually do between $250,000 to $400,000 in closeout. So that's where the $1.36 million came from. What we did is we met with the chairs of the Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, Capital Committee, and School Committee, and explained it to them initially. Once the number came out, we then sent the Board of Selectmen the email last week letting you know what that was. And then what we did is Finance Committee last week discussed it. There are money ideas as far as what to use the funds for. Some of the ones are we have a bylaw in place as to stabilization needs to be 5% of the prior year's budget. to make sure that's it. And after that, then money, unless there's another purpose for it, it goes into the capital fund. I believe during the discussions that we had with this group, there were discussions with regards to paying down debt that we haven't borrowed yet, in order to save funds there. We have some debt that's out there that the capital committee is paying down through the ban process. Right now, there are some small ones on that. And then there are, OPEB was another item that came up. So there were these ideas that came up. There were no real dollar amounts associated with them at the time. I do know that there are individuals of that group having discussions as to some idea of dollar amounts. But right now, those were the main ideas for, and putting money into capital, obviously. Those were the ideas that came up and hit the table when we met. Are there any questions?
Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't stabilization about 7% last year? Wasn't it, we're above the minimum?
Stabilization, we were above the minimum. As far as whether it was 5.7 or 7%, I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
So earlier you described essentially a balance sheet adjustment, right? You were moving a liability up back into an asset.
Correct.
And that was about $500,000 of this.
That along with the amount of money
That came in.
When you tell people that they're gonna be advertised in the newspaper.
Yeah, they pay.
It's amazing how many pay.
Yeah.
And then those that don't pay get advertised.
Right.
Once the advertisement hit, there were some people who came in and said, I guess you guys are serious, and they pay. I mean, we have on an annual basis anywhere between $350,000 and $500,000 in taxes that don't get paid in a timely fashion.
So of the 500, I think to follow up on Leo's question, how much of it was actual income receipt, cash received, and how much was you moved it into tax title property?
Approximately about $300,000 that was received, and
Okay.
the other amount was
Becomes tax title?
tax title.
Right.
Was added. We had done tax titles many years ago.
I was
It
trying
hasn't been
to
done.
get to the net
Yeah,
cash number.
yeah.
Okay. I got it.
It's a good problem.
Well, as I said before, I mean, a number of years ago when it came in quite high, it actually, some people call it a nice problem, but I call it a problem because you want to know where it came from, because you don't want to miss estimates and everything else by large dollar amounts.
Yeah.
You really don't.
You almost wonder if there's something structural that's not right.
Yeah.
Right, well,
So
that's
that's
why I
why we
think
look
it's
at it.
important to, especially for the public, because $500,000 is what I would call bluebird in sales. It was, we weren't really planning on it. And the excise tax was,
Next, everybody in town, it seems.
Congratulations on all the new
All
cars.
new vehicles, that's correct.
You all get cookies tonight.
Back from 2000, following it from 2008 to today, it leveled at one point. It never really dropped, but then all of a sudden, it just started picking up. So we are going to make adjustments in this budgetary process for those revenues and act accordingly. Because, I mean, it was I want to say it was 160,000 that we got.
A mess of that. Yeah, it's a big mess.
Huge. Huge mess. Not big, huge.
That's real big. Okay.
So we are looking at those areas where we may have missed significantly on revenue estimates, and we're gonna be adjusting them accordingly.
and when are we gonna have the discussion on what we're doing to keep these funds?
Well, the discussion is going to be, I believe, between everybody, and FinCom, hopefully tomorrow night, will be setting its meeting for the all boards, and that you can have the general discussion at that point.
Should we have an opportunity as our own board, because it's hard at the all boards meeting to have a
Yeah.
free-for-all, just to decide what we would recommend?
Yeah, I think so.
So maybe at our meeting in January, we could put
Yeah,
that on.
we'll put that on for January.
Good.
Yeah.
Let's give it a little time, if you can.
Yeah.
on the
That's
agenda.
that's an important discussion.
Right.
Yeah.
There it is.
absolutely.
I know you say it's good news, but I mean, now you have to decide. Now,
Yeah.
It's a good problem.
well, and we're working with finance to make sure that we make the proper adjustments in the budgetary process to be able to deal with it as well. Just a reminder that a week from Thursday, on the 24th, Town Hall will be closing at noontime, and that's it.
Is that the same on the 31st, too?
No, 31st, we're open till 4 o'clock.
Else timber.
That's it.
That's it.
I have the next item, too.
You want to vote on selectmen budgets?
I believe I'm the last one to make a presentation to the Board of Selectmen.
Setting the example.
Yeah, I know. I don't know whether this is a good thing or not, but I'm the last. And during the budget if you go through the budget documents that we gave you, you'll see that this year, due to trying to balance the goals and objectives and planning for changes that have yet to be negotiated, where possible, we've level funded the budgets, and other areas that was just not possible. Two items, the Selectmen's expense account, copy machine and office supplies have increased due to actual cost increases in supplies for the copier and to provide more realistic number for the actual office supplies within our department. One of the things that we are doing and that we've broached with Finance Committee is that since we're all going back to one floor at Town Hall, we're actually looking at taking all the supply budgets from all the departments within Town Hall and pulling them together into one line item.
Makes a lot of sense.
And that is something that we're going to be working through with the Finance Committee during the budget process. And that is Lorraine, myself, Janet, those are the, Liz, Land Use Boards, those are the ones where they have budgets currently. And we'll be looking at those and combining them into one line. So FinCom was receptive of the concept, and it's something that they're encouraging us to move forward with. Within the other selectmen department expenses, we're seeing potential increases in the town audit. Building and liability insurance, the reason for the building and liability insurance is within the last 6 to 9 months, we've had 4 claims on buildings or liability, either weather-related or accidents that occurred with vehicles and buildings. And the Monty Tech budget. The Monty Tech budget, we normally just put in a level fund, but we know it's going to be going up, so we plugged a number in there so that the Finance Committee, once we get the real number, can reduce it as opposed to add to it. 2 budgets, public buildings and benefits are where we could, and we'll see the biggest changes in the coming year. For example, public buildings, building repair line shows a slight decrease, but with the facilities management being addressed, this will likely end up increasing. That is the $75,000 for that line, which was 24. We had reduced it to 22 only because Town Hall was now a newer building with new systems in it and have less repairs to it. However, we still have other buildings that we need to address. There's an HVAC system at the police station that has been, we've been replacing motors, pump motors on that system on a regular basis every 2 years. Certain pumps go, and that seems to be an annual event. The DPW has buildings that they have looked to have replaced. However, there's a new exhaust system that's needed for the garage because when I say the garage, it's the mechanics bay, not the main garage. The mechanics bay, due to the fact that the only air extraction system in there is the huge fan on the side of the building that you have to turn on to exhaust it. Well, when you exhaust it, you're exhausting all of the heat that's in that room as well. So there are things like that. There are smaller outbuildings within the DPW across from their offices, which are where they keep some equipment, where the sheds, the roofs are need to be replaced, those types of things. So that the idea of the $75,000 is actually a good one. We've used, and one of the issues that some people have said is if you go take a look at the line item for public building repairs, that we haven't spent the $22,000, $24,000 that we've had on an annual basis. Well, a good reason for that has been that there are two buildings that we have not been putting money into because you voted to spend 3.97, so we weren't going to be putting any money into town hall when that process started. It was going on only if it absolutely needed it. And then the other one was the Council on Aging. If there is something that's absolutely necessarily needed, we'll fix it. But again, that's going to be going through a $1.5 million renovation. So that leaves, on the public building side, that leaves DPW buildings, police, fire station, the two fire stations, and this building. And this building, we spent $24,000 on a new heating system just a couple of years ago.
I'm confused on the Council on Aging. I mean, we're doing a accessibility, an elevator and some parking lot and stuff. That doesn't mean we're not maintaining, I don't believe as part of that project, we're doing any maintenance on the rest of the building.
The roof and the siding
are fairly new.
Fairly new. They were done just prior to me getting here.
I guess my
9 years
general
ago.
question is, doesn't this 22 go up to 75 now? I mean, I still see
Yes.
72, so this is going to be 75, and that's where money will be available to spend, okay.
Correct.
All right. So-
That's what the request was. When the budget was done and submitted when it had to be submitted,
Okay.
it was 22. After that, the idea of 75 came in. That's why you see the 75 is later on.
I just suspect there will be things in Hildreth House during the next year.
Mhm.
And as in every building, there's some maintenance.
On the benefits side, we've seen, again, a steady increase in workers' compensation, Medicare match, Worcester Regional Retirement, and health insurance. The other items that we have that are increased, health insurance is something that the Minuteman and Neshoba Health Group is working on currently, and I believe in January, they're gonna be taking a vote, January, early February, taking a vote. The last 2 years, they've had reserve funds that they've used to offset increases, and they've kept the increases very low. There's a question as to what they're going to do and when they're gonna do it again this year. So you're looking at potentially an increase in, larger increase in health insurance than we've seen over the prior 2 years. And you're also looking at our OPEB costs and what we have put aside for OPEB. Well, we've done quite a bit with respect to looking at what other communities have done, and we're doing well. We're still looking at that as an issue for us to be able to deal with. Within the budget process, there was what your other priorities are. My personal, and I believe that's what I put in there, my personal, number one was additional hours for the Assistant Town Administrator, HR Director. And I believe that the document that I gave you goes through some detail as to what that was for. And I believe I purposely inform you that I individually underestimated the actual need in hours when we first did this. And that's my fault. I did not realize that the HR piece of this was going to take as much of the time that it actually does take, especially given the Federal Care Act, so forth, so on, that we're starting to have to do reporting and gather data on, which isn't easily gathered from our MNHG or any of the other groups that we deal with. So that was number one, and that was to increase it from 30 hours a week to 35 hours a week. And then obviously, number two was the $75,000 for the municipal buildings.
That it, Tim?
Yeah, that's, I believe, all of your budgets.
Questions?
No, so what you have right now, Tim, under personnel for us is Marie at 45,929, so it's not including
That's correct.
what you're talking about,
Right.
7655 additional.
Under the guidelines from the Finance Committee, anything that's new or added needs to be put into a separate category as priorities.
Oh,
But
okay.
if they go through the budget process and there's funding for it, what those are, and whether or not there's any funds available to do it.
Just a question on that. You say in the documentation that 60% of her time is spent on HR stuff, and most of that's for the schools. Is a lot of that to set up stuff because we haven't had the HR capability in the past, or?
We found that some of it is pulling together the HR, but a lot of it is, now that we have HR, employees are
using it?
utilizing HR.
Yeah.
Before they didn't, and now they are.
Again.
It's not uncommon that after school gets out, that at 3 o'clock, 3:30, somebody from the schools comes in. The DPW employees, if they're on their lunch break or something, they come in. Not to the frequency, only just because of the sheer numbers. So that's where that has been.
I have a question on the inspections.
Yes.
Aren't they covered through the fees?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so this is, I mean, you obviously have to account for
Correct.
it, but,
And that sheet is actually, the sheet that you have in there for the inspections is actually wrong. Because last year and this year numbers are 50,000, and the numbers you see in there prior to that are very low. Those don't include the wages or the money that they earned.
oh,
Those are the expenses for each one of those departments.
We're saying, can, help me, I'm looking at fiscal year 2015 actual and building inspections, 1897.
Right.
That's the-
1,897, that was the
Expenses.
expenses for the department, not,
And then the budget is, for fiscal year 2016 is 50,000.
correct.
Help me reconcile the difference.
I just explained to
because
you.
it's wages.
It's, the 50,000 is wages and expenses. What you have there is, in the prior years, just the expense portion, not the wage portion.
So the
Okay.
two line items combined.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
So where's the one that, something dropped off here? I mean, there was another account for
You're
wages.
going to be getting a new page for that one.
Okay, all right. Okay. Stu?
No, I've been working with Marie on the personnel board, and I've seen, I think it's a good use of money to expand her hours. I know things that we haven't ever done, we're getting done now, and I think it's helping the whole process, and ultimately, I think it saves us money. So, if for nothing else, I think it's good for that, besides the fact that we should have a little redundancy here and someone that can step in for people that might need a total knee replacement.
All right, is this, if we approve this, will you get your knee replaced?
She's on TV.
Will you get your knee replaced?
Name names.
Who's she going to replace?
Rich.
No. Say, excuse me, sir?
If we approve this, does that mean you're gonna say, hey, I'm getting my knee replaced? You don't have to answer that, that's personal.
Just yes, I do need, the third doctor told me, yes, I do need a knee replacement, and that the knee replacement will happen sometime within the next 6 to 8 months.
All right.
I didn't see that anywhere in the budget.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Does anybody have, Leo, you have anything?
Health insurance rates are climbing fast.
Yeah. That's gonna kill us.
Yep.
And that's why the vote that MNHG will be taking And we don't have a preliminary number yet, and Lorraine's on the executive board, and Marie is the alternate for that one. They did say that it was going to be in mid to late January, early February, when they become making that decision. They were waiting for some numbers from the insurance carriers to be able to see what, and as Mr. Blair has said, the rates, especially in New England.
14.5%.
I was gonna say, does Minuteman
Looks
have?
like another 8%, 16 to 17. So that's that rate. Our costs are gonna double every 5 years.
And have they given Lorraine sort of an estimate? I mean, Leo just threw some numbers out, but has Minuteman been talking at all about what they think it might be?
They're in the process of negotiating
What
with
is
the
that?
companies right now, so that's why
Okay, so
that's all
then
going on.
they're
The
not
numbers
letting
I was
their,
referring to is what's
Yeah,
in the charts.
Right, which are the estimates that we put in there,
Mhm.
based on the knowledge we had at the time of
Okay.
doing that. Because we weren't sure whether or not they were going to begin, because they've had some decent years where they're self-insured, that they have not had as bigger claims as they had in the past.
Go ahead, Leo.
One other question. If we calculate this OPEB contribution, potential contribution, and liability, I think that we had an accelerated level of retirements in the last year.
We are checking with what the current rate is then to what was estimated.
Versus to the
Yes.
projection, because 4 or 5 of the early retirements will drive those numbers very, very hard.
Especially once you replace those people.
Right.
But that is one of the things.
You're gonna get that data point at some
Yes.
point. Okay, good.
What Leo said, that the health insurance will double in 5 years, think about it, is very scary, because 16% of our raise and appropriate money of what we raise, 16% of your property taxes goes to pay for health insurance. In 5 years, it'll be 32%. That's a scary number.
And you're actually paying for it in 2 different ways. You're paying it for it in the actual budget for that, and you're paying for it in the OPEB liability.
Yeah.
So it hits you, not only does the increase hit the increase hits you in the OPEB liability.
You know, in private industry, when this thing happens, people often study it and think about, okay, should we change the plan? What do we do? Does the town of Harvard have any flexibility here, or do we just like, that's it? I mean, which group deals with this?
We have the only way to change the plan is through MNH, changing the plan through MNHC, which we did.
a few years ago.
Was it 4 years ago, 5 years ago?
Yeah.
It was 5
Was it
years ago.
5 years
yeah.
ago? We did do it 5 years ago, and that's where we sat down. MNHG changed the plan, and we brought that back. But prior to that, we met with all the unions and negotiated with all the unions a number of years ago, and made changes to it, and which were beneficial to us. At the same time, we are going through a period where insurance, there's nothing that's capped insurance. And their insurance companies are still increasing rates. And-
No, I know, a lot of plans, co-pays keep going up, a lot of different things happen. I just wonder, I mean, if it's been 5 years since we've really looked at it, and it's 16% of our tax bill, you would think at some point we'd take a good hard look.
We're always monitoring what's going on with the GIC, because we need to be a certain percentage off from the GIC, and I believe it's the number's either 5 or 10, I'm not sure which one it is, percent difference between what our plans are and what the GIC plans are, in order to be able to make a move into the GIC.
Mhm.
So we have been monitoring that as an option for the town. At the same time, it has been on our radar and continues to be on our radar. Now, that was initially what it was, and then we had to couple that with OPEB.
I guess, I don't want to belabor this, but if 5 years ago was the last real hard push at this, when is the next planned real hard analysis of what our choices are and what we might do to try to keep it from doubling, as Leo?
Well, and we're also in this consortium.
Right.
Yeah,
So that's the group that was looking at another plan.
But it's, they're all going up. I mean, GIC is going up, and, you know, there's a trackable difference between them. It's not enough to change. It's just that they're all going up beyond what makes it very difficult to keep up with. Yes, Leo.
It might not be a bad idea if this board sat down with a couple of representatives from the Finance Committee and a couple of representatives from Capital Committee and devoted a good part of a meeting or an entire meeting just to talk about these numbers. Because there's a lot going on now. There's a lot going on. There's OPEB liability that's kind of moving around. There's healthcare costs that look like they're tracking very high. There's a lot of free cash. There's investments in buildings that are being considered. I think all boards think's good, but as Lucy pointed out earlier, it's hard to really dig in too deep on anything there. So that might be a worthwhile use of time at some point.
Yeah, there's a lot of dollars on this page. We spend a lot of time on much smaller things, a lot of time, and this is millions.
The healthcare dwarfs what, right now, by almost a factor of 3, dwarfs what we pay for our debt service on our big buildings. Even in the worst case, going 5 years from now, it's still bigger than that. And in the end, what do we have to show for it? You know, I mean, you have staff, yeah. I mean, it's with the building, you have something, you know, somebody can touch it.
But in the
We have an option of saying we have no paid employees and we all do it as volunteers. That's truly your,
That's not
looking at not wanting to pay for health insurance, you just don't pay people to work for you.
That when we are serious about, you know, as you know, about how much debt we can take on and what the debt service is going to be and so on and so forth. When we're having all those conversations, what we're not factoring in is an uncontrollable rate, cost on a whole different part of the budget. So when we're looking at total cash flow for the town of Harvard, it'd be really nice to look at all of those pieces at the same time. That would give you a much better sense of what we can and can't do.
I mean, that's what didn't mean to have no employees. It's more that the thing we have no control over dwarfs our buildings. And, you know, we all want nice things, but there's this thing that keeps pulling at our back pocket saying, you know, we get this huge expense and there's not a lot of control we have over it. Yes, Dave.
So, you know, in fiscal 13, 14, and 15, actually healthcare costs went down. Slightly, they went down. And in 16, the budget was about a 15% jump. Do we know if 16's tracking that 15% jump, or is it lower or higher? Do we have any idea?
It's tracking it.
It's tracking that. All right, so, I mean, we've worked on healthcare inflation. I mean, we had a few flat years. I know it's a big jump. I like to believe it's not going to jump that way every year, because that would be a big problem for everybody involved, private or public. I mean, how would you give healthcare to your employees? I mean,
well, we're seeing double-digit rate increases.
For this,
yeah, and they're telling us that get used to it.
You are.
So what are you doing, what are the employees faced with?
We're eating it. My companies, we're eating it. We actually increase the portion we pay because what we see is that we have to compete for talent. It's becoming such an issue now that actually when you're interviewing people, they want to understand the health and benefits plan more than they do the salary at this point.
Right.
So we sort of took a contrarian approach and just trying.
And how are you covering those costs as a company?
Trying to improve margins and cut costs in other areas. That's all you can do. The only way to control healthcare cost in the private sector, and it's sort of like this in the public sector, not quite as, but is to make it a smaller portion marginal cost. So increase sales to smaller marginal cost.
or change your deductibles and,
Right, I was gonna say the co-pays. and stuff like
right,
that.
change your co-pays and everything. right?
Yeah, we did go to PPOs where they could select their
Right.
coverages, but it's funny, people keep going back to what they're used to. You know, I want to,
Shocking.
exactly, I want the smallest possible deductible, and I want to be able to go pick any doctor I want, and
We tried one year raising the deductibles, and we paid the deductible ourselves, and that was less expensive. But it changes from year to year. It's very difficult to manage.
I mean, Ken's idea is valid. We did it, was it you and I that did it
Marie spent a lot of time.
Marie was on it.
6 years
We
ago
did it.
when we renegotiated the healthcare, and the unions worked with us on that, and
Huh?
it was a tough process, though. I would do it again, but I think we maybe have to consider doing that and
My knee
trying
surgery's
to.
coming closer.
What's that?
I said my knee surgery will be sooner rather than.
under our new plan, we're going to do it for you.
I don't know whether I like the sounds of that one.
60-year-old Scotch anesthetic is-
Have we killed the selectmen?
I think we're well done with that.
Okay, we're okay with sending it as is to the finance committee?
They can be
With
done.
with Tim's suggested edits?
With Tim, well, that's what he presented us.
Well, that's not, so that's a separate category, you have
The
that
verbiage in the
somewhere?
front.
Yeah, in the narrative.
Yeah, it's in the narrative, does it have to be?
No, it's
somewhere?
not shown up there, no.
Right, okay.
Okay, next item, we have to set the date for the caucus.
Which
Do
would
we
be,
have to vote this?
yeah, which would be March 5th, 2016.
I'll vote the budget, no?
Oh, I thought you.
You want to vote the budget? Can
Yes,
you
do that.
give me a motion, please do.
Well, anyway, go ahead.
No, I move that we approve the fiscal 17 selectmen's budget as presented by Tim with his edits.
I would second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Good to go. Okay, set date for caucus.
March 5th, 2016, which is a Saturday.
Say that again.
March 5th, 2016.
That's the routine date. more or
That
less.
would be the date.
It's a Saturday night.
It's always a Saturday night.
Right.
It's odd.
No,
7
that's
o'clock.
It's always been Saturday night.
tradition.
Tradition.
Don't mess with tradition here.
Still over there.
Odd night to drag people out.
They like it.
They're not out very long.
It's true.
No, they're not. Fire chief, how to state travel?
They have to vote on the caucus date?
Yes. they do.
Oh, I move we approve March
Thanks,
5th
Julie.
as the caucus date, 7 PM.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Location to be determined, right?
Act on fire chief's out-of-state travel request.
This is the second visit for Engine 2. It is near completion, and it's near completion approximately 6 months sooner than was originally anticipated.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the chief would be going out to make sure that everything is done according to the requirements, and it would be the 17th through the 18th
Of,
this month.
ooh,
I move that we approve the request for the fire chief's out-of-state travel.
second. Do
All
you have an
those in
idea
favor?
about how much it costs?
It's part of the cost of the vehicle, the company
Okay,
pays for it.
okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next item, update on use of old library.
Can we invite the members of the collaborative up, since we had asked them to come back to this meeting? Or I would like to invite them to come up to the table.
I mean, what are we going to talk about?
Well, if we're talking about an update on the use of the old library, and they are the group we've been talking to, it seems appropriate to let them participate in our conversation.
What do you think? Everybody okay with that? All right. Somebody, one member or two members from the collaborative come up and give us an update on the status. So, Jim and Mark, you have new information. An update on That's why you were invited up here.
Our agenda item is update on the use of the old library. I'm assuming we all might have information.
Okay.
So I'm happy to start.
Yeah, it's a good start.
I sent around to the board, or sent it through Julie around to the board Thursday morning, a proposal for how we could go forward with the cultural collaborative. I think you all have it in your packet. And for the benefit of the public, I'll read what I started with some givens that the cultural collaborative is the only group that's really come forward with a plan for the use of this facility. We'll be out of here in May. We're not sure that the Council on Aging is going to be following us into this building because they're looking at some other options. At our last meeting, it was suggested perhaps they would like to buy it, but there's still the option of leasing is something we need to be considering too. We all know that there are upgrades that need to be made, probably code compliance and certainly ADA accessibility. So what my proposal is that given the HCC is the only entity that has presented the Selectmen with a proposal and business plan for the use of the entire old library, I would say that we support the concept and appreciate the town's interest in converting the old library into a community cultural center. We do have concerns about the potential cost to the town that would be associated with the change from municipal to a nonprofit use, and these things need to be understood by both the Selectmen and the HCC going forward, because these could be significant. I think the initial proposal was to lease it. It's now been suggested perhaps selling it. I think we need to look at both options. And I would propose that we form a small working group comprised of 2 members of this board and 2 members of the HCC, and ask them to go look at both options and delineate what the possible costs would be, what would be acceptable to both parties, and see if they could come back at our second meeting in January with some recommendation for how we should proceed. I don't want to see us vacating this building and we don't have a viable plan for it. And I would just like to reiterate that the school committee had some time ago expressed interest, but they then said they didn't want to compete with the cultural collaborative if they were serious about using it. They also indicated they couldn't use the whole building, which makes it problematic for having this surplus space and how does it best get utilized. So at this point, I'm thinking that the HCC is the most viable option in front of us, and I would like to spend some energy and time pursuing that. Tim told us at our last meeting that whatever decision we make in letting another party use it, be it lease or sale, has to go through a surplus process and a town meeting vote. So either way, the town is going to be weighing in on how this building is used, whether they would approve sale of it or approve leasing it to another entity outside of the town. So that's my proposal.
Tim?
You already have the approval to be able to lease the building from town meeting. If you were to sell it, you would have to go back to town meeting and then get approval.
Because the lease originally to the
As long as the lease falls within the guidelines of what town meeting approved.
Center on the Common?
Yeah. Whatever the town meeting approved is the guidelines.
So there was no end date to it?
We had to go
Okay.
through a procurement process. We
Okay,
went through
I didn't
similar
realize that.
procurement.
And last time you didn't mention that, so thanks.
So what's the procurement process?
For leasing?
Leasing the building?
Leasing, you put together the bid specifications, you advertise them accordingly, you get responses, and then you review the responses. And then the one that provides the town with the greatest benefit is the one who gets it.
But you can frame what the use is, because I believe then with the
That's
Center
what
on the
town-
Common.
Whatever town meeting approved as far as what the lease could be, as far as the use, that's what it would be.
Right, so it was for a cultural center or whatever it was. I can't recall the vote.
And that's a process that put the specs together, put it out. You're talking about anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks.
So does the RFP go out before the town meeting has approved, we want to, say it was a lease for a
Town
different
meetings
use.
If it's a lease, town meeting's already approved.
Okay, what if we were, it was approved for a specific type of lease, correct? Or was it just any kind of lease?
Yeah, I don't have the language with me, but it's the same language that we went by when we did this 3 years ago.
Center on the Common. My only question is that if it's a lease with another cultural activity, then what the town meeting approved is within the scope of, we wouldn't have to go through another town meeting vote, but we'd have to go out for bid again to a cultural organization. Okay, I just want clarity in how this all works.
So that would be a 6 to 8 week process. And again, if you were going to sell it, then you would need approval from town meeting to be able to sell it. And again, on the sale of it, I'm not so sure whether the same criteria could be used, and that's something we're checking with the state procurement people.
So
And that would come before.
Go ahead, Leo.
Just a question, suggestion, Mr. Chairman, just as a point of information at this point. If it's okay if we ask Julie to pull that article and to forward it by email to all of us, just so the next time we're talking about this, we have it in front of us.
So in the procurement process, we develop an RFP, and then we negotiate the details of the RFP, of the response.
Correct.
So it would be out of order to negotiate a lease before we had a response to an RFP.
Right, you would want to put the RFP together.
Well, in essence, it would be sort of what we did the last time, not reinventing the wheel here, right? It was
Right.
a cultural collaborative that we leased it to, so the RFP would be substantially similar to that old
That
RFP.
depends on this board. I mean, that one that board
Okay.
put together. I mean, you people approved, the Board of Selectmen approved the RFP before we put it out last time.
Yeah, and in my suggestion that this working group be formed, the intent was to delineate what are the issues that need to be addressed and have an understanding of where the responsibility for meeting them would be. I don't see that as negotiating a lease, and I think it's part of framing an RFP, actually, if you decide who's responsible for what.
So what you're proposing is to start negotiating a lease with the chosen entity prior to putting the RFP out.
Well, the parameters for what we would consider appropriate, and there's one entity that's come forward and given us a pretty thorough plan, and so it seems to me reasonable to work with them rather than appear like we don't want to cooperate. I mean, we're all in the same town, we're all trying to accomplish what the town has indicated a strong preference in seeing done with this facility.
So what you just said helped a lot, because I've been trying to think about, trying to get my arms around the confusion about this process and what's been going on. And I realized that there's really two things going on. One is this idea as to how to proceed with a use for this building. And the conversation about that goes to, is it a viable use? Is it something the town needs? That kind of stuff. And that's all, I get all that. The thing I've been struggling with, and the thing I've been trying, despite the perceptions of some people in the public, to help move this along is that, having been in this world for a long time, until you know what you have to lease, what it's going to cost, you can't do anything. So there's two entirely different things going on here. I've been saying for some time, what ADA compliance is it? How much is it going to cost? What needs to be done? And what's the market rent for this building? I have no idea. And without those data points, the discussion about whether it's a town building, or it shouldn't be leased, or it shouldn't be sold, it's a silly discussion, because the real decision is, if this building requires very substantial upgrades for any use, the taxpayers are gonna have to decide whether they wanna spend, and let's just use a number, not because it's the right number, but to a number, $500,000. They're gonna want to spend $500,000 for a certain level activity with a certain level of revenue, or they want to spend $500,000 for a different type of activity. That's the conversation. The conversation really isn't whether this is a good idea or not, or whether their plan is necessarily good or not. I think they've done a lot of good work on this. I have no problem with that. But it's impossible for me to sit here, because if you were to enter into a lease right now, not knowing that, and the obligation for it were to be on the town, we would be making a decision to undertake an unfunded level of expense, subject to a commitment on a lease. Conversely, if these good folks or somebody else were to take it on, they'd be going in totally blind. They wouldn't know what they'd have to spend.
Well, and I think
So-
that's part of the idea of getting together and trying to, they've
But
offered.
that's not a lease negotiation.
I didn't
That's-
say lease
But-
negotiation.
But we've been.
Ron did.
but
I didn't.
No, but what we've been looking at is a proposal, and then with discussions of a lease or a sale and so on and so forth. My suggestion at the last meeting was simply to allow us to at least begin to move forward by identifying, one, that there is an unknown liability of some magnitude, and two, to identify who was going to be on the hook for it. Because the fact of the matter is that really this decision is, are you going to upgrade and renovate, ask the taxpayers to upgrade and renovate one building or two? Bromfield House and this building, or this building alone? Or is somebody else, these folks or somebody else, going to pick up some or all of the costs for that? That's really the discussion. And so it's hard for me to do this in the abstract like this, because we don't have any data. And that's why I'm struggling.
Well, I go back to, people have known for many months that this building is going to be empty and it needs to be used. This is not a surprise. We've had, again, one party that's really come forward with a proposal for the use of this building. All I'm suggesting is, and we're floating between your idea 2 weeks ago that we sell it for a cost ranging from $1 to $300,000, I heard mentioned, to the other option being a lease. But you're right in saying we don't know all the costs. On the other hand, this group has offered to retain an architect. I think to understand if it's a nonprofit leasing this from us, what would be the requirements? Are they different from just us leasing it to anybody? I think we need to work to understand what these options are, and we need to understand if they say, if you're getting to this level of expense, this is beyond what we can manage financially. So we're sorry we can't use the building. We wish we could, but we can't. And then we're back to, well, then what do we have to invest in it if we're going to turn around and lease it to somebody? I think, or use it for something else. I think that the school has the administrative offices that they have not really, as far as I can tell, looked either seriously, again, the way the COA went back and revisited the cost of upgrading the Hildreth House. Once they saw the first big ticket and realized the town wouldn't do it, they went back and thought of another way of doing it. As far as I know, the school committee hasn't pushed against that original estimate that is now, I don't know, 6 years old. And they've never come in and said, well, this is how we would use this building too. So I feel there's no other, I don't know, the only other option would be if the town just said, we're going to fix it up and we're going to leave it as spare space for the town to use when boards need meetings.
Well, I wouldn't be suggesting that, but I have a question for you. The question would be, would you, if the school committee and then the taxpayers subsequently decided that they wanted to spend whatever amount of money was necessary to upgrade
Bromfield.
Bromfield House, would you be willing to go to the taxpayers and say that we're asked them to spend whatever money is necessary to make this available to be a cultural center?
I think for one thing is, I don't want to decide what the taxpayers are willing to do without framing a proposal, and then I would go to, I would. If I thought if there was enough interest out there, and from what I can see now, there's very strong interest, I think, yes, you always go to the town and say, are you willing to fund this? I think the other piece is understanding, well, just using the Cultural Collaborative again, because they're the only ones who've come forward, with whatever plan they are proposing for their own fundraising and what they would contribute to restoring this building and retrofitting it. We don't know how much of these costs would be shared between the two entities.
But but it's important, because so what I'm hearing is, subject of course to the approval of the voters at town meeting, you feel passionate enough about the benefit that this use would give to the town, to ask the voters to spend some hundreds of thousands of dollars on upgrades to the building to make it possible.
I don't know what that amount is, but I would certainly I would go at this point, what I understand our options, yes, I would certainly go advocate for it.
I think that's more than fair. That actually helps me understand why this mechanism would make sense to you. So that's helpful.
Stu.
And all I wanted to add to that was that I guess I understand the need for data, but the only part that I think we don't really need is the market, what the market rent is. It's a town asset, and it was built for a town 130 years ago, 120 years ago, whenever, and I think it's been used as a place to meet, to have, as a library and as a building. So I don't know if we need the market rent. I think I agree with you, we need to have some idea of the costs, and I think Jared brought up a good point, and he's in the business, so to speak, right, that maybe small towns can get some waivers or exemptions or extensions or whatever. And
grants.
Or grants, and I guess it'd be nice to know that before. I'd like to know that, knowing what town meeting like is in Harvard, that I'd like to have that before I went to town meeting, because I wouldn't like to get my head ripped off. So I think it's a good idea to have that, but I think then the working group gives us a way to do that. You could tap into some of that expertise that we have in town and see, it's 500,000, it's 50,000. Well, I don't know what the number is, but let's get a number. You're right.
But wait a second, the working group predisposes a winner of the RFP, and I don't think that's fair to the voters. Your working group, who's on your working group? 2 members of the Board of Selectmen and 2 members of the HCC board. That assumes that the winner of the RFP is the HCC board, and that assumes that the rest of the Board of Selectmen agree with the terms that the 2 designated selectmen work out. I mean, I have no problem if individual members of the Board of Selectmen, like Leo and Ken did, sit down with members of the HCC to see what where they stand, what they can afford, and what can be worked out. And then the board goes back and develops an RFP and factors in the feedback that we get, informally from the HCC, but to pick 2 members of a third party to say we're going to tailor our RFP to that third party is not fair to the rest of the voters.
I'm not saying we're tailoring it to, I'm using it, this is the one group that has said we have an idea, we know what's involved. Why wouldn't we want to talk to them? I don't think it's presupposing how the RFP is. I think also, and it'll be interesting to read the article that went to the town, because I can't remember the sequencing when it went to the Center on the Common, but I know in an RFP you can be pretty specific of what you want, and if there's another cultural group out there that sees the RFP and wants to bid on it, fine. I don't see us as gaming this system, I guess, for lack of a better word. I'm really trying to solve this and move ahead. And I just want to clarify one thing. I believe the HCC requested the meeting with Leo and Ken informally to find out what their concerns were. I don't believe we sent Leo and Ken to talk to them.
No, it was informal. Ken.
Well, can I just answer one thing? I'm sorry, Ken. No,
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
They did indeed ask us if we meet with them, and we were delighted to, and we had a very productive meeting, by the way. I learned a lot, and we said we hope we could talk again.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and I agree. I appreciate the invitation from you folks, and it was a really good meeting we had last Friday. I learned a lot, and I hope you guys did too. I just want to say, I've heard a lot of different possible uses for this building. And personally, I would like to see it be a thriving cultural collaborative. I like the idea, okay, personally. I live here in the center, so I'm kind of, I remember the last couple of them, and I'd like to see one make it. My concern, and I'm so glad you guys were talking a moment ago about the cost issue here. What would have happened here if we did a 5-year lease and we try to get this one going this time, and it started to go, and then 2 years from now, we have to go to town meeting and ask for $250,000, and the voters turn it down? Then where are we? So that's why I think it's so important to understand this before we reach a long-term commitment. And I don't see how we can sit here and say, yeah, we're gonna lease it to you guys, now let's go talk about it. That's the part of, Lucy, your proposal that I just can't go for. I think we need to understand what we're getting into so that before we commit to that sentence. And I very much enjoyed the conversation. I'd be happy, when we left, we said, let's continue the conversation. I'd be happy to continue the conversation and see, and I'm not wedded to selling the building, leasing the building, whatever.
So, Ken.
So it's, but that thing you were just talking about, to me, is sort of the nub of the issue.
Explain to me, silly me, what the difference is between my saying, we are going to designate 2 people from this board to talk with 2 people from them. How is that different from, oh, randomly 2 people are going to go talk to them, and and you're going to gather information and find out interests, costs, who's willing to pay for what? I don't understand how it's different. What I'm saying is we are acknowledging that, yes, this is a way to go forward. We need to understand obligations and potential costs and how they could be covered. They have information that we don't have. I'm sure we can find information that they don't have on needs or whatever. Let's see what we can work out, because we are fishing in the dark, and absent
Lucy,
trying to move forward.
The way going informally is more like market research. By talking to them, you see, what's possible, what they can afford, and
Why
things
don't you want to be public about this is what this group is
because
intending
it
to do?
predisposes an outcome, and I'm not ready to do that. I'd like to, like Leo, I'd like to see what it's going to cost us, and make sure that we respect the rest of the town's interest in the building. Leo.
Go ahead. Maybe we can move this along a different way. Why don't we, members of this board, 2, whatever number to be designated, why don't we do the due diligence? We just haven't done that.
Due diligence, all right.
Well, I mean, it's not that, it's gonna take a little time. It's not gonna take forever.
The problem I have with that is if 2 of us, part of the due diligence, the big question, one of the biggest questions is the ADA issue.
Right.
And if 2 of us go to the ADA and say, hi, we're from the town of Harvard, what's it take to fix the building up? I think we may get a different answer than if, let me just finish, than if the cultural collaborative goes, perhaps with the support of the selectmen, and says, hey, we have a plan, we're looking at leasing this space from the town, and here's our plan for ADA compliance for our use. How's this work? I think you may get a very different answer than if we go there.
Yeah. So it's remarkable to me. I get it, and I know that's true, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
That said, it's remarkable to me that we can be both chastised for not being fully compliant and embracing the ADA Act, and at the same time talk about there may be ways to get around certain things. So here's, well, that's what was said earlier tonight, so let me just.
reply to that. I really do.
What is it?
I tell you, my first wife at age 48 was struck with a stroke, and for the last 7 years of her life, I pushed around in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
I am extremely acquainted with ADA compliance. I can tell you a lot of the buildings in this vicinity of the world and what it's like to go in and where you have to inhale to go up the elevator and all the rest of it. And so I think, you know, she had a lot of issues all her life, and it's, there are a lot of different ways to provide accessibility, and some of them are much more aggressive than others, but some of them can be more workable, and I just think it's possible for an arts center to do something over a period of time that they can handle compared to what the town of Harvard might have to do.
But if the town of Harvard, that's my whole point, if the town of Harvard owns the building and is going to lease the building out, then the applicant is the town of Harvard. So how is it somehow, how do you finagle that vehicle?
Yeah, perhaps I was thinking I was back on your case of them buying.
Right,
You're
no,
right.
so which is
these-
why I suggested that in the first
Yeah,
place,
yeah.
because it changed the cost and it probably changed the standards. But let's face up to the fact that we have an old building that's a historic building that the people in the town love and are invested in. It's going to have to be made accessible. It's probably going to be very expensive. Why not just go and ask the question and find out once and for all what this means? I just, to me,
The
it's,
advice I've heard with other projects is that the best way to approach what Ken said, approach the AAB, is to go in and say, this is our proposal for this building. Is that okay?
so
And
when
you get a read from them. I still don't understand why, yes, maybe it's a public building and we will learn from the state, no matter who you're leasing it to, this is the standard. The flip side might be, we are looking for, this is the lessor, the lessee is going to be doing this.
So
What would the state require? I don't know.
So how about this as a threshold question for them, for the AARB? The town of Harvard is considering a use of a municipally owned building that would be leased to a private entity. When we file an application, who will be the applicant? If they say it's the town of Harvard, you have your answer. If they say, oh, it's whoever's using it, you have a different answer. But all of these things are knowable. When we worked on the town hall project, you and I went down to LLB, and
We sat with them, with the architect.
right, and they went through and said, gave us a laundry list this deep of saying, hey, it's a town project. You have to do this. You have to do that.
Anyway, I guess we're down, way down in the weeds. And my intent
This is
was.
the crux of the issue.
It is.
There are other, who knows what other code compliance things are floating out there? I don't know.
So Leo suggested that we learn all this information and maybe two of us work on it. Okay, do you feel comfortable working on it?
Sure,
Do
but-
you feel comfortable working on it?
Yes, I just don't understand the reluctance to sit down and work with the group that why you're afraid that we're predisposing an outcome when, big surprise, who else is going to come out of the woodwork?
We already have, the school committee will take the building if the cultural collaborative doesn't get it. They only said they don't want to stand in the way. They've already passed on the Bromfield House, so it's not like we don't have a use for the building, Lucy.
They indicated they could not use,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry,
Excuse me, Lucy. I tell you what, we're having a discussion.
but I invited them to the table to be part of the discussion.
I don't think that's appropriate, Lucy.
Well, I'm allowed to ask that.
No.
I believe I am under our policies.
Yeah. Any selectman could invite someone to the table, Ron. I had it happen when I was chair.
To respond to the school committee thing, though, before, I would like to hear from Mark. Susan Mary made it very clear they don't need all the space, and sharing the space with somebody else would be problematic because of security needs.
Lucy, that's something you just made up.
I did not
You
make
just
that
made
up.
that up.
Susan Mary has told us that.
No, she hasn't, Lucy. I've never heard that. I sat down with Linda about sharing the building, so you must have heard from a
I
different
have met
Susan
with
Mary or a
her
different Susan.
twice, and Linda twice. And anyway, I would like to hear from Mark, too.
So, depending on how you want to handle that, I'll yield if you want to hear from Mark. That's up to you. If not, I do have something I just want to say about that.
Okay, go ahead.
The only thing is that could be an issue for use by the school committee. It could be addressed, obviously. There's ways to make this part of the building separate from other parts of the building. So, but my understanding was that they were being gracious, that their preference would be to have their offices here, but that they did not want to interfere with another use if the cultural collaborative or somebody else like that, with that sort of a use in mind, were interested. That was my understanding.
Okay.
That's why, when you brought up the idea of selling the building to the cultural collaborative, I was very excited about it, because it totally removed from the equation the liability that the taxpayers would continue to have for the building.
I only suggested it because it was the only way to move forward at that point, in my view, because it actually put the question, right? It actually did what your memo suggested.
So, Mark wanted to say something.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Want to hear from Mark?
I just was going to ask a question to Leo's point about the AAB. If the way that and I have no experience interacting with them, but if the way that they operate is so black and white, which is kind of how you've described you would expect it to go, how can this building be out of compliance for the last 30 years and the town's not getting penalized for that?
Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you have an answer?
Yeah, I gave you the answer at the last meeting.
Right.
It's a public building. The public accommodation for the building, it's town-owned, it's been town-owned, and at no point during that period of time have we triggered anything that would require it to go beyond that which is grandfathered. That was the answer I gave 2 weeks ago.
I thought we did though in 1982, way before any of our time. I thought we put that addition on the building and we didn't follow
We
the
did.
orders and conditions.
We did
No,
not.
we put the
Those were
elevator in.
those, what you did in 82 was the access.
That elevator in
And
this.
everything that's happened since then, there's not been 30% of the cost of the building in any given
Assessed value.
assessed value of the building in any 3 years.
I read what Stu just said, so, but I think there's almost two different things. I think when they did that, they didn't comply.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And then since then, we haven't
Haven't done
triggered it.
anything.
Exactly.
I get it.
Right. But I read the same thing you did.
Right, that's what I thought.
But looking back, the town continues to have a liability on this building. If somebody pushed the issue, we might have a liability. And we owe it to the rest of the town to make sure that somehow we address that liability so it doesn't fall back on us when we don't expect it.
Yeah, so when I made my earlier comment is I actually feel like we need to make these buildings fully accessible. You had a tragic situation with your wife. I had an exact same situation with my brother, who died here in Harvard 6 years ago, and who I took care of from the time he was 20 years old. So I know exactly what that's like. So I'm very sensitive to that. We hear arguments from people who are advocating certain things, both you need to do it, but let's see if we can find a less robust way to do it. So those don't hold any water with me, because if this is a public building, which it is, it's not accessible now. The elevator's not accessible, the bathrooms aren't accessible, it's not sprinklered. It needs a lot of love. It just does. It's just the way it is. I just want to get the answer to the question. And then these guys we may get the answer and they may say, well, we're not even a little bit interested. Right?
Anyway, I've spoken my bit.
How would you want to go forward?
Yeah, how do we move forward?
What I suggested, I think we have a group that has ideas. I would like to embrace that. I think we've heard from the town that they like this idea. I think at our last meeting, after they left, and this idea of let's sell it for $1 was still this, sprinkling in the air above us, Ron was all set to take a vote and thought that all 5 of us would vote to sell it for $1 to this group, that this would be great. I think you don't just decide outside of talking to somebody, do you want to do that? So I don't understand when we have options in front of us. I think what I read in the paper last week and a couple of the comments we heard earlier this evening, people are not keen on the idea of selling something that is viewed as a treasure of the community, but they would support leasing it. I just don't understand the reluctance on the part of this board to embrace the help of some very smart people who have ideas on how this building could be used and what needs need to be met. And why not go see what would be required to accommodate that activity? And I don't see why you're afraid, Ron, that it's predisposing it to a certain party.
Ken?
I only object really to one word, where it says that we would just say the board supports the concept and all the rest of it. I'd like to explore the concept, quite frankly. I'd be very comfortable there. I don't think we should say, yeah, the concept makes a lot of sense because we don't know the cost of the concept. So I would like, I as one, speak for myself, I would like to explore the concept and do all the other stuff you're talking about here. But I don't want to start out by saying, before we understand the cost of it, that we support it. I'd like to explore it so we know what it is, and then we can decide whether we support it.
And then would you go forward having a working group with 2 of them and 2 of us?
I would say after the RFP. You get the information, you develop the RFP, you get a response for the RFP, and you negotiate the lease. That's a way to move forward. We find out what we're obligated to do, and we take it from there. Right now we're trying to go negotiate a lease with someone, and we might have $1 million liability on the building, which is what Leo said.
But, I mean, I don't see it that we're negotiating the lease right now. Right now, what we're talking about is have a working group to try to get some of these answers to move forward. So, we're not having a lease, but I think we haven't done this in secret, Ron. This has been, they've been here with their ideas. I mean, if some other group has an idea for this building, I certainly haven't heard about it.
Yes, you have to. You've had the school committee expressed an interest in the building. So both you and Lucy continue to dismiss that the school committee is looking for office space, and they would avoid a big investment in the Bromfield School. They would pass up a $500,000 to $550,000 possible income from the sale of the building for this building. So it's not like the building doesn't have a use. Looking forward, the school committee would not use the whole building, so there would be plenty of space in this building for meeting rooms, town hall annex. As the town government grows, which I'm not a fan of, there'll be a place for the people. So it's not like the building is going to be vacant.
Yeah, but Ron, it's not a slam dunk that the town's going to agree to sell a Bromfield house. I think that's one of the most absurd ideas I've ever heard, to sell a building in the town center next to a school, when you don't know what's going to be 20 years from now. I can get Peter Warren to lecture us on how dopey it was not buying the land behind the firehouse. So it's short-sighted to sell the Bromfield house. I would certainly argue strenuously against that idea.
I just want to go back. Ken, what was the word that you substituted?
Explore. I would like to explore the concept. I've been exploring it since I've heard it come up. I'd like to know more about it.
I guess I go back. Would you be willing to explore it with, I didn't hear an answer on that, I guess.
Yeah, I've sat down with these guys last week. I mean, yes, I sat down with Jared yesterday. I mean, I've been doing a lot of exploring. But I think it would be nice to have, I'd like to explore the cost of it. I don't formalize that we're exploring it. I think we've been exploring this since it came up in October.
No.
I
mean, by
understand the
saying we are
question, really.
designating, we're specifically designating a group to do that on behalf of the selectmen in this, see what we, I just think it's kind of squishy to say, yes, we're going to all individually go run around and talk to all these good folks, and they're going to talk to all of us, and we're each going to come back with something slightly different. And I think without.
So I wasn't suggesting that for the due diligence part of this, that we talk to representatives of the Cultural Collaborative. I was suggesting that we talk to the authority, the Architectural Access Review Board.
So Lucy and I were supposed to do that. Maybe that's the next.
Right. So had we done that, we'd be sitting here right now, and here's what the conversation might be like. We looked into it. We pursued we did all this stuff, and it looks like the following has to be done.
Okay, so I have a question for you.
Mhm.
How is it that we are able, in the town hall, which doesn't have a lot of public use, a big space upstairs, that the AAB didn't say, you absolutely have to have an elevator?
Because the lift that we put in.
Because we went
meets
in with an
requirement.
architect, and the architect said, you know, a lift will do, you can do this, and showed the AAB how it would work, and the AAB said, okay. The same thing happened with Hildreth House. Why don't we in a senior center have a regular elevator? Because an architect said, you know what, I can go, I can present a plan, and what Ken had said, and they will look at it and say, okay, that's reasonable. I think if you walk in with a blank slate, they're gonna say, you need a full-born elevator.
So we need to hire an architect.
This is what this group offered to do, Ron. They offered to retain the services of an architect and go to the
Let
ABA.
them go to the AAB with the building plans and the architect and say, this is what we propose to do with the building, and this is met with approval of the AAB, and that's a useful piece of
So why
information.
don't we say we're doing it with them?
I don't think that's appropriate, Lucy, I really don't. I think I can look out on TV land and say that I'm not favoring one group over the other. There happens to be one organized group that wants this building, and I think it's great, but it's not just our building to give to one particular group.
I want to try this the last, I promise to give up after this, but if I were in their boat, I wouldn't be prepared to say to you I wanted to lease the building until I knew what it was going to cost me. And nobody in this room right now knows what it's going to cost someone. I think we can all agree it's going to cost something. Yes? Okay. So it'd be imagine the situation where, if I could finish the last thought, was we come back and it looks like it's $500,000 or $600,000, and we look at the people who want to lease it and say, okay, it's $5,000 a month, and they say, we don't want to pay $5,000 a month. We want to pay $400 a month. Okay, so then we go to town meeting and we say, you know something, we want to spend $500,000 and lease the building for $400 a month. These are silly propositions because this is all knowable. We can find this out.
So don't we find out by forming a working group to find this stuff
And
out?
the working group ought to be us. We're the landlord. We're the lessor, they're the lessee. They need to stay on that side of the table. You may love them, and I love them, that's fine, but that's not how it works. You've got to do your due diligence for your side of the equation, and they need to do it for theirs.
I know, but it seems to me, everything I've heard about the AAB is that you go there with a plan. So that would involve the people leasing the building, and it would show we're supporting them to some extent to at least include them in the conversation to go find out these answers.
But see, to Ron's point, Stu, and I understand that, but to Ron's point, that presumes that they are going to lease the building, and it presumes that's where you're gonna end up. And we, as the stewards of the building, have an obligation to find out what needs to be done so that it has whatever use is contemplated.
Yeah, but they're not gonna lease the building at $5,000 a month if that's the number that comes up.
I get that, so then.
I saw Jim smile, yes.
Yeah, so, but then you'd have to ask yourself the question, would you go to town meeting, or would you want to sign a lease without going to town meeting saying, listen, we're gonna spend $500,000 to fix it up, and then we're gonna lease it for $400 a month?
So I have a thought for you.
Okay.
Mhm.
If the school committee moves in here,
Mhm.
it's still a public use, municipal,
Mhm.
so we're still grandfathered.
To change use, though.
No, it's
assembly.
not.
Yeah, right now, as I understand it, it's assembly space, is that correct?
I think
As a
we have
library?
skidded under this notion that it's a town building, and it's always been some sort of town building, and it's grandfathered, and we're able to be in here. So how does the school committee any different, so are we gonna say, oh, guess what, we don't have to spend any money, folks, because it's gonna be another
They've
municipal
never said
board?
that. They've never said that. They've never said we're gonna walk in
So
here.
why didn't we fix it up properly when we first came in here?
This, on the temporary use?
If we were thinking, what were we thinking? That's my whole point. We didn't know where we were going. We have an idea of where we're going, so why don't we sit down with the parties and figure out, can we make this work? Right now, it sounds like Well, if we
Lucy,
hit you hard enough
Lucy,
and you're still standing, yeah, we'll lease it to you, or we'll sell it to you.
Lucy, how about something to help move the ball forward that puts them in, back on the cultural collaborative? I would consider that the board would support that them as the potential lessee doing their due diligence on the building gets their architect to say what they have to do to the building. Leo, if you leased a building, it wasn't to suit your needs, you do at your expense, you'd figure out what you had to do to the building to make it work for you.
Or the landlord does it and just adds it to the rent. That's just the way it's done.
But I mean, even before you moved in, you'd say, this is what I need done on the building.
Sure.
So, I mean, that would be a way going forward. If they have, if they want to have an idea to solve the AAB issue and the code compliance issue, and say, this is what it would cost us, fine, I'm fine with that.
There's one other thing, just to make it a little more complicated, unfortunately, and that is, the presumption on that is that the potential lessee leases it, performs under the lease, and stays. If they make improvements that are appropriate for their use, but for some reason don't continue the use, then you have to consider what the town has to do then to make it useful for the next person in line.
You know, I could get hit by a car tomorrow. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. They have come with a plan that says we would like to start with 5 years. We would
Lucy.
like to have a long-term relationship. How can you begin to say, well, what if it doesn't work? Then what are we stuck with?
Lucy, I'm saying the opposite. Let's find out what needs to be done, and then we'll know, and everybody can make an informed decision.
I think that's counter to what you were just throwing cold water on Ron's idea of let them go do their due diligence and come back with when they know what this might be. And you just said, oh, that's fine, but what if we find out later they fold and they're gone, and now we're left with, well, they only did part of what needs to be done, and now we're left holding the bag.
If I threw water on Ron, I apologize, Ron. I hope it wasn't too cold.
I've been underwater enough.
I'm trying to give you the best advice I can as to what you really need to do to, one, make this thing move forward, and two, have it play out publicly and have some hope of support. Because if you're going to sit here and say, I'll tell you what, why don't we vote on a lease right now then?
I'm not ready to vote on a lease.
Well,
and
then
I don't think this group is ready to vote on a lease either.
Since you don't know what your costs are, you don't know what the exposure is, you can't make an informed decision. So you can't be this enthusiastic because you don't have enough information to be enthusiastic.
I want to have a group working on figuring out what do we need to do to accomplish that. I would like to see us work together with with a group that's worked very hard with a proposal on how to reuse this building that we've gotten some very strong support from the public on. We saw a good response to the pilot project. We saw a good response to the Center on the Common in terms of the activities. People appreciate that kind of venture here in the center of town. I feel like we're being obstructionist rather than saying, hey, here's some energy, here's some people that want to help. They're smart people too. Let's work together and see what we can do. If you want to say let them do due diligence.
That's a way of moving it forward. Another way is we'll go back to what you and I, Lucy, were supposed to do, is go to the Architectural Access Board and see what's required. If you don't feel comfortable with that, maybe we hire our own architect and figure out what, come up with some ideas. I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to think of a way of getting the information that I think most of us.
And I guess I
are
can't
looking
understand why everybody's afraid to cooperate and collaborate with another group of townspeople. This totally befuddles me. Why we're afraid to, huh?
I'm not afraid.
Oh, good.
Go on.
I just don't understand the reluctance to say, let's cooperate.
I'd like to explore this. And I've already said I'd like to see this outcome if we could figure out how to make the costs work and not have to go to town meeting halfway through the 5-year lease and find out we don't have support and the whole thing unravels. I want to avoid that. So I'd like to explore this. I'd certainly be happy to work with the group over there. And so maybe I'm a little different spot than some of the other folks here, but I'd be happy to explore it.
What's the word change?
What's that?
What's the
Change
word you wanna
support
change?
to
Yeah, I
explore.
would say supports, we don't know yet.
The BOS wants
Would like to
would
explore
like to explore.
the concept.
So you want to make a formal group subcommittee of the Board of Selectmen to work out a deal with the Cultural Collaborative?
I'm not sure
on
what
how-
a subcommittee is. I've been here for a while now. I've never seen us form a formal subcommittee. What is
This
a
would be,
subcommittee?
I called it a working group comprised of two, I mean, we have working groups, I mean, doing all, we've got the town manager, town administrator, little working group.
So
That's not
let's
a
say
selectmen
we have a
working group.
working
I'm-
group of two people that meet with the Cultural Collaborative. We have another working group that does the due diligence to get the information that we need from the, as to what the cost of fixing up this building are. Is there anything else I missed, Leo?
Yeah, those are the two that have been floated.
Right, but I think it's one working group, though.
Yeah.
That's the one group that's getting all the answers to that.
Well, I've heard two proposals. One is, we as the landlord should figure this out and look after the interests of the landlord, the town, in this case. And the other was, we should have a working group with the people who have come forward with this proposal and see what can be figured out together. So there's two ideas floating around here.
Right.
So we could do both. Would you be
Why
happy
don't-
doing both?
You probably don't want to go to the AAB board with two proposals.
Right.
I
All
could,
right, so I'd make a motion to take Lucy's proposal and make it a motion with Ken's,
to change support to
Ken's
explore.
changes. Right. The HCC is the only entity that has presented the Board of Selectmen with both a proposal and business plan for use of the entire old library. The BOS would like to explore the concept and appreciates the town's interest in converting the old library to a community cultural center. However, the BOS has concerns about the potential cost to the town that may be associated with a change from municipal to private use, costs of which both the BOS and HCC acknowledge could be significant. And I have to read the whole thing and the rest of that and make that a motion.
I'll second it.
Wait a sec. I mean, I thought your proposal was just the first couple lines. I didn't realize it was this whole three-paragraph thing.
okay.
There's a lot of stuff in here.
Well, that was to create the working
I
group.
mean, you talk about appreciate the town's interest. I mean, I appreciate the interest. Should we declare it's the town's interest right now? I think we're making this a lot harder. I mean, a group has come forward with an idea. Obviously, I don't mind working with them. I met with them on Friday. And if we want to say, okay, we'll pick two of us to continue those conversations, that's fine. But I don't think we need quite such a long proposal here. We're just trying to figure out, how to get our hands around this.
So Ken, what's wrong with you and Leo going a couple more meetings, what you did of talking to him? What's wrong with that? And come back next.
I told them at the end of the meeting I'd be happy to continue it, so I won't speak for Leo.
I don't understand why you want to keep it as, maybe so-and-so will.
I think I've answered that about 5 times, Lucy, so I don't know a better way of answering you. Okay, if you want to make it a subcommittee of the Board of Selectmen, then
It just seems so formal. I've
didn't
never
say
seen us have a
I
subcommittee.
didn't say a subcommittee, I said a working group. We have a working group looking at the town manager change.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do. It's the town moderator, it's Tim, it's.
That's not a working group with the Board of Selectmen.
Yes, it is.
It's one selectman.
It's a working group that was put together by this board.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was.
No, the board directed me to put a group together.
I'm just sorry, I just haven't seen a selectman subcommittee.
Well,
I'm just not familiar with the concept.
But just, you have to formalize a little bit to give you a little gravitas here to go move this forward. So you could go to the AAB with, hey, we're from the Board of Selectmen, blah, blah, blah.
Well, we didn't say we would go that far. The working group is, go ahead, Leo.
I'd be happy for any two members of the Board of Selectmen to form a group and go dig in on this. I think that's fine, personally.
Okay,
Any
so
two.
Make the motion.
But I'd like it to be that short a motion. It doesn't.
Yeah.
I don't want
But that's
people
what
to
I'm
read
saying.
into this that, we've already decided this is the answer. I mean, we're trying to explore how to put something together here that it will work and be, I don't know.
So what I'm hearing is you're trying to explore how to give, to lease this building to one specific group before you make an RFP. That's what you're doing,
I don't
Ken.
care whether it's a lease
I-
or a buy or whatever it is. A group has expressed interest, and I don't
I
mind two
got
folks
that.
working with that group to work out some of the questions and try to get a handle around some of the costs and come back to this group. I think that's a healthy
Well-
investigation here. We kind of seem to be stuck.
Well, we're going back. Lucy and I are supposed to go to talk to the AAB and find out some information and discuss what we need to do. So why don't we just, Tim, can we get that after the first of the year? I'm assuming that we're not gonna.
I can try and get it the week after Christmas.
Yeah, you've been trying for 2 months.
I'd much rather go to
We
them
haven't had a
with a
plan.
proposal rather than a blank sheet of paper.
We didn't have a plan.
Yeah, we're not, so
guess
how are we
what?
gonna get a
Did you hear-
proposal?
Well, that's,
Yeah, they heard.
I was saying, I'd much rather go to them with a proposal than a blank sheet of
Right.
paper.
Right.
So I wouldn't just go quickly schedule it. I think we need to sort
How
out.
do we get a proposal?
We sit down with
Well,
them.
They offered to
It's not a
retain
binding
an
contract,
architect,
Ron.
and
Lucy,
why are you reluctant to take advantage of somebody saying, "I'll help"?
Well, what about, I talked to somebody in the snowmobile club. They have 110 members. They'd be interested in this building. You know, the Lions, what about the Lions Club? I think you're picking the winners and losers before you're making sure it's fair to the rest of the town, and I think that's wrong.
But we have a town meeting vote that this should be a cultural center. That's
No,
the
we
last
don't.
thing-
We ha-
Yeah, we do.
we have-
What do we have?
I sent it all to you. If you check your emails, you all have it.
Well, I
It was
don't,
Article 5 of August 2013. Sent it to you, town meeting did not specify. Specification came from the Board of Selectmen afterwards when we did the RFP.
So
And I
it was
do not,
just-
and I do not have the RFP on this tablet.
so it was just authorizing it to lease it to anybody? Okay, so it was just a general lease.
It was the Board of Selectmen who then determined
Okay,
the
so,
parameters of the lease.
okay, so we have, so say we go the lease route, we have the authorization to do a lease.
Mhm.
So we do our due diligence and figure out
Article 5.
5.
who wants.
Last article. Thank God for the town website, that's where I found it.
Okay. I mean, we can go on all night about this, so I don't know how much longer you want to go on this, because we got other items on the agenda.
That's all right.
You sure?
I trust what Tim says most of the time.
Thank you, Lucy.
Well, because I've heard different things about this whole AAB stuff. Yeah, it was pretty,
It's broad.
it's very broad, so
We could lease it for a restaurant.
Good.
Or-
we could,
Don't say pub, I still want one.
But the color of this, wasn't there more color at town meeting about this? They knew who we were leasing the building to.
Right.
Not at the time.
Or what we would be leasing it for.
There was an idea as to what we were
Right.
going to be leasing it for.
Right.
It's actually good, because it is flexible,
Right.
and that
So-
helps.
But I think everything I've heard, and I'd like to know if they've heard any different, that going to the AAB, you go there with a plan. Ken's correct. I mean, going with a blank sheet of papers, you're putting in a express elevator. I give up what you're putting in.
So, can I ask a couple of questions?
Sure.
Okay. Can I ask these?
Yes.
Okay. As I recall, and if I'm wrong, you'll help me, I'm sure. You guys were gonna use this floor and the second floor, the main floor, yes? There would be activity on this level and on that level,
Eventually.
and eventually on the third floor.
and eventually the mezzanine as well. Okay. So I'm just trying to frame questions that we could ask, right? Because we don't have to say it's for what a specific use is, but we could tell them what we want to use. So we'd go and say, we want to be able to have access to this floor, the main floor, and the mezzanine.
Not the upper floor.
Well, I
That's
think
it. That's what they just said, Ron.
They just said they wanted to use it.
No, you
The
said.
top floor, right?
Way up, the way up.
Oh, yeah, okay, you're talking that second, so if there's 4 floors, you're talking about using 3 of them?
Are we crafting the question to the AEB right here?
No, I'm asking, trying to understand what parts of the building you wanted to use.
I think the intention was to use the whole building, ultimately.
Okay, so that makes, that sets the threshold for one of the questions, right? Because it's the vertical access question. So, and that of all of them will be the biggest driver, because that also drives bathrooms, right? And it also drives outside access and handicap parking.
We can talk a lot of details. Maybe we need some professional help.
Oh, sure.
Maybe we could look at an architect to advise the board. Maybe we can, does that make sense? And to frame the questions.
Are we going to pay for that, Ron?
Well, yeah.
Well,
Their architect can work for free for us. Lucy, you keep,
I keep trying to get us, can we acknowledge that we want to
then
cooperate with people?
Lucy, let's flip it around. Let the cultural collaborative, if they're amenable, come take a look at this building, work with their architect, go to the AAB and say, we want to use the building, here's what the AAB says we'll do. Does that make sense?
What is your response to that? Or your need?
My responses would be that without some commitment that this board is interested in leasing or selling the building to us, why should we spend the money?
Okay, that's fair.
Would having a couple of selectmen working with you indicate that level of interest or not? Do you need something stronger?
No, I mean,
If we're working collaboratively, yeah.
I mean, the motion that you proposed.
Okay, you know what, we can go around in circles on this. How many people want to keep talking about this? How many would like to move on to the next item?
Well, I'd like a resolution of it.
Huh?
I'm done talking.
I would like a resolution of what we're doing.
I mean, we can talk all night on this and not get a resolution.
Okay.
And there are other things we need to get to, so I think we've spent enough time on it.
Can I make a motion then?
You can make a motion.
I move that the Board of Selectmen, being interested in exploring the concept of a cultural activity in this town, in this building, work with members of the two members of the Board of Selectmen work with members of the HCC in doing due diligence to determine if
Let's just say to explore the concept.
okay, to explore the concept of converting this for a community cultural facility. Okay, thank you, Ken. I know, the words are, I can't
no, I didn't really get it, because you were sort of reading from that.
Okay, that.
Said just go with concept and.
Explore the concept, working with members of the HCC, and that would be two selectmen,
Period.
of converting this building for cultural activities, or you said you
Sure.
had that at the end. The English
Is there a
is terrible.
Second.
Tim, does that form a subcommittee of the Board of Selectmen? If we act on this?
2 members from this board, voted by this board, yes.
Okay. So it requires posted minutes?
Requires posted minutes?
Posted meetings.
Posted meetings,
Posted meetings,
minutes?
We have had.
Press is there and everything, and the whole 9 yards?
We have had task group, working groups before, Tim.
And we just agreed to it. That's why I suggested Leo and Ken were
We
doing
have-
it. If you want to be you and Leo, if you want to be me and you, but it's up to you. So there was a motion made and seconded to form a subcommittee of the Board of Selectmen. Are we?
No, the words weren't subcommittee. I mean, I hate to trigger this into a public.
Well, we're voting, Tim, help me understand this. It's a subcommittee of the Board of Selectmen.
Mass General Law website.
We have had working groups address issues and not formed subcommittees. They have a specific short-term charge, and they're asked to do
That was, I
something.
believe, prior to the change in the open meeting law for the state that we all now have to comply with. Because when those changes went in, it used to be If there were 3 members of the board, it was a subcommittee, and 2 members weren't. However, now if it's any members appointed by the Board of Selectmen, is considered a subcommittee. Unfortunately, that's the Mass Open Meeting Law, and I'll pull it up to read it verbatim for you.
Yeah.
Why don't we pay for the architect?
Say that again?
Why don't we hire our own architect? Just to look at that question. Frame the question as, we want this building to be handicap accessible and compliant for access to all levels. And have somebody come in, do a cursory review of that and say, based on that, here's what I think, here is something, prepare something that we could take in and put it in front of the Architectural Access Review Board. Because if we don't make a deal with these folks, some use of this building's gonna have to occur. And it's kind of on us to know what that is.
Yeah,
I like that idea.
I like that idea. Do you want to keep your motion there, Lucy, or you want to act on Leo?
Well, we have to get something done. I think we're being arrogant, but I'll withdraw it.
Okay, Leo, would you make that as a motion?
So moved.
Second.
What is it, to hire?
We're going to
Board of
pay for the
Selectmen
architect.
To hire an architect at the town's expense,
At Ron's expense.
at Ron's expense,
He's a big
Um,
spender.
No, my credit card.
to evaluate what changes might have to be made to the building to make it handicap accessible to all levels.
You had said in there for a cultural activity.
No, I didn't say that, but because it really doesn't matter.
And obviously someone that knows what to do, that's dealt with the AAB before.
Right, and by the way, we could have the architect, so that'd be the motion. We can have the architect come and we can ask these questions.
Okay, made, seconded. Do we want to beat it to death?
No, let's vote on it.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm abstaining, because I don't really understand what Leo's trying to do.
Okay.
I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I don't quite understand. Sorry.
Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, it was really fun, huh?
Spending a lot of time.
Okay, try to keep going along. Review of debt schedule.
We've got 10 minutes, guys, or 9 minutes. And it seems that, just looking at the remaining ones, now maybe we can't do F without doing E, but I saw Ken's email, I think, that Capital has postponed these 2 items pending our decision.
No, I think the review of the debt schedule feeds into the next 2 items.
Yeah, they're definitely related.
I'm going to pack them
In
up.
fact, that's why we postponed the
1 or 2.
DPW facility, because we wanted to see what the debt schedule looked like before we voted on it. Happened like October.
So, who generated this?
That was generated by Ron.
What do the different colors mean that don't come out as colors? I mean, I couldn't understand what she was trying to convey.
In order to be accurate, I would actually have to see the colored version because I know it by colors. Thanks, Steve. Because part of it is already debt we already have, part of it is bands, part of it is...
Yeah, she has it broken out that way.
Yeah, there's no key on the original, Tim, if I showed it to you, if you saw the colors, it doesn't say what the colors are.
Thanks.
I ate 2.
Take home.
Oh, whatever you want to give me, sure. That's great.
Give
Thanks
him
for
the
this.
basket.
Debt
Zero.
service,
Zero.
zero. Total outstanding
Unfeel.
long-term debt about
Got
2.5
Christmas cookies
inches
at
from
home,
the top.
thanks. I shouldn't be eating.
This is debt service, right, not debt?
Yes, it is. It's outstanding debt. The whole thing
So
is...
the whole thing is the debt that's coming down.
Correct.
It's a chart of how it's coming down.
Of what we have now.
Yeah, it's an amortization schedule.
Correct. Okay. The yellow were the
Which are the yellow?
The yellow ones
Are the top ones?
are the top ones.
And what do they mean?
The light gray or the dark gray?
The light
The
gray.
light gray. Those were the public buildings. They were the public safety buildings, school, public library. The next one, the green ones, are equipment, which is the darker gray.
Okay.
And then your next one after that is a brownish color, which I don't know how it comes out,
Wait, is that,
The third band there.
which is the water project, the water and sewer project.
oh, you're down in a different place, I
Oh,
think.
here.
You're starting at the top?
This is the top.
Oh, thanks, Leo.
I seem to have two
scrolled
colors.
down.
I seem to just have 2 shades of gray at the top. I think we all could use 50 shades of gray.
That's the new town hall.
What, 50 shades of gray?
Shades of gray.
These cookies are good.
Yes, they are. That's why we asked for
Mine's
one.
staying away.
School roofs. Yeah, there is a, you don't have it here with a split.
Yeah.
Do you see where your equipment,
Yeah, my
There
note,
is-
okay, some of it is sewer.
the first two are equipment. The
Oh,
last 3 of those are actually the water and sewer project.
oh.
So then the color then follows for the buildings, equipment, and then water and sewer.
So we
after that.
really don't care about those designations so much.
So then the green, the darker color then follows on, whereas green is equipment, and the yellow on here is buildings.
Oh, I thought that was.
So that's what the color coordination is, okay?
Okay, so I'll just read the
Thanks,
words.
sir.
But these aren't total.
This is, yeah,
Not
it's
totaling
hard,
by column.
they're hard to figure out.
Yeah, they're not. There's 4 levels of subtotals.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then
Did everybody
there
get
should be
that?
another page that actually
Yeah.
totals it all.
Yeah.
Well, then there was this other, oh, this is how, this is still the same thing of known going out.
This is much clearer.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, this,
I think we're wasting.
this is corrected with totals on it. The big sheet actually isn't that.
Oh, wait,
Yeah.
which one?
This sheet is far easier to follow
Right,
and
as
makes
far as
the
the
points
follow-
clear.
Right, right,
I gotta find that sheet, I'm not sure. And all my stuff.
Corrected spelling.
So
This is what we had in our packet.
This one, yeah, this one.
This is the one that shows we're at 941,000 of debt service in 2016, and it balloons up to 1,000,007 in 2023, thanks to the cabling.
Oh, this is, this
"Oh,
one.
Mom, I love your cookies," so he takes them.
Right.
Okay, it had a different cover sheet.
Yeah, I think this gives the best overview. You can see the debt on top as it's being paid down. You can see the town hall coming on. And then all the other things, Hildreth House and K-Wing. Kind of makes the point.
Is that the same thing?
That's the outer years.
Well,
This is it.
This is it.
Yeah.
if I'm reading this right, does it go up to 2025?
Goes up to
Yeah.
2025, and then the following
And then it
page,
goes to
keeps
20
going.
yeah.
But I think the real, we looked at this on the capital committee at length on Monday, and the concern here is the debt service this year is at almost $1 million, $942,000. And it goes up to $1,007,000 per year, an 80% increase.
Wait, where does it go to
2023.
1.7?
Down here.
Oh, in
5 years out.
2022. Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
The one I have shows it going to $2,031,000 in
yeah, the one
2021.
that's in our packet, they moved stuff. Yeah, I believe this is the one that's in our packet, because we're all looking at the same one.
Yes, the one,
Right.
the one
Yeah.
that was in the packet.
Okay.
If they move stuff since they gave it to us for the packet, then they moved it. The one in the packet is the one.
Is
that-
what Lorraine sent
Correct.
to everyone. Remember Lorraine sent all of you?
Yeah.
No, it was the, it was
that
the
one
bigger
does-
one.
And, yeah.
Which
I'm
one?
just saying that,
That one doesn't have any totals on it.
Right,
It's really
I'm just saying that
impossible to
that's what's
have-
in the packet, was
Right.
what Lorraine sent.
This was not in the packet?
I don't
This
think
was
so,
in the
I don't
packet.
have that.
No,
We all got it.
Yeah,
How else did we all get it?
right. This was in the packet.
Oh, that was from Debbie Ritchie and Ron sent that.
Oh, Debbie sent it.
That was
You
not from
forwarded
Lorraine.
this from,
Yeah,
The one,
but it also had this front.
yeah, so I don't, that was,
that's what Debbie made up.
Yeah.
For capital, it's dated
So,
September 9th or December 9th.
Yeah, December 9th, right.
Okay.
And she made some assumptions on the DPW facility, because he had asked for like $2.25 million in fiscal '20, and she pushed it out and made it $1 million. And,
I can answer that.
and she made an assumption on Hildreth House, which we had 2.7 in fiscal '19, although we did not vote to fund it at that level. So it was kind of left it in limbo, and Debbie put it back in at $1.5 million a couple more years out, assuming some money would be raised elsewhere.
and it's more, but that's what I couldn't figure out, because it looks like, I don't know the delays in the borrowing after the fact of doing something, but if I'm reading this correctly, it starts in 2023?
That's right, because she has it in the 22 to 26 timeframe. So if you build it in 22, say, you start paying it off in 23.
Can we just back up a little bit on an original version that I was given that was the date generated the day before showed the DPW building at $2.4 million and the Hildreth House at $2.54 million, starting the debt service in 2021. And what that did is it took our $941,000 debt service for year 2016 and ballooned it in the year 2021, it would balloon it to $2,031,000, which is
Wait, two what?
$2,031,813.
That's before this page was worked down.
Before the page was worked down.
The
So,
first draft.
so when,
So we don't know the numbers, I mean, we could figure out the numbers that go into that.
Well, but the numbers aren't, I mean, they're estimates.
Yeah.
the numbers are estimates, and they're to get a feel for where things are.
Right, so Lorraine's sheet, I realize you can't use this sheet because it's color-coded, but this sheet
is
shows
existing.
actual.
This is what we're carrying
She-
right now.
She starts with the actual at the very top.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And then takes the
Then she's
stuff
added-
that's being added.
Right.
And makes, the first cut where it goes up to over $2 million in debt service in the year
Right.
2021 is based on,
Yeah, I agree. So but if you look at the actual at the top, that's not really the number. You want to go down 3 more lines.
To pick up the
Because
town hall.
that picks up the bands and moves them into bonds.
And that's the town hall, the
Correct.
360.
Exactly.
but you go to the bottom column, it's the total.
It's, yeah.
Absolutely, because that's the stuff that's coming on. Yeah.
Coming on,
Yeah,
it includes the stuff
So
that comes.
she's just showing what you're carrying right now with what we've already approved, and then with these others coming online, with the total.
With some assumptions of where they come online, and the first
Yeah, so
assumption.
in
So she-
5 years, it's 600 grand a year and more in debt service based on these revised assumptions.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
goes from
And-
940 to 560,
Yeah.
Yeah.
1562.
But that makes some assumptions on
Right.
different things, of where they're, the size of them and where they are.
Yep.
An assumption was made on the DPW building that not the entire building would be done. And some of the items assumed in the DPW building might not be valid. It could be that something needs to be done on the roof earlier. So the consensus for myself, Debbie, Alice, and Susan Mary is to put significant placeholders in for the DPW building and the Hildreth House. Not that they're accurate numbers, but they're something to,
So just as I think that's smart. As a formatting going forward, if the numbers that aren't hard numbers could be italicized or
I think
something,
also,
right?
I think it would be helpful, instead of somebody's randomly saying, well, what they requested was this, but I'll put in this because the numbers work better, is put in the numbers that people are estimating right now.
we have that, and that shows, if you put the numbers in that were estimated right now, in year 2021, your debt service goes up to $2,031,000.
Right, that's not what I have in front of me.
No.
That's my point.
But what they did is look at, collectively, we got together and looked at a way of managing the debt service, kind of flatten it out. Because if you go in 5 years, The raise and appropriate increase is 7% just for the long-term debt service.
I appreciate that. I just think to randomly squish in what's going to work, what's the amount, then is it worth the investment for what you're spending? I mean, you could be spending $1 million and it's pointless because you haven't really done what, I mean, we're expert at not doing what we need to do. We've mastered that skill.
You have to make some assumptions to try to, there are assumptions made on the DPW building. It's a significant number. It's not a perfect number, but it gives you a management tool of figuring out where you move things.
So the only, I'm just sort of feeling a little like Lucy about this, is that I know that. We came in the second reel of the movie, though. So you saw the first reel, which was, here are all the numbers that everybody had.
Yeah.
Then you massaged it, and I'm sure that they're right and accurate and appropriate, but since we don't know where we started, I'm just trying to get up to speed, because I'm not seeing the 2.5 million and that kind of stuff, so.
Yeah, and the K-wing at
Well, because really, it's here's what's currently
Why didn't that get
requested,
slashed?
and here's what a plan to soften the impact of that might look like, right? So it's kind of 2 iterations of.
Right, and maybe it's a question of
Yeah.
timing rather than putting them
Right.
both, those big things both in the same year.
Right. So can I ask one question? Because I don't, Connie, I don't know if Connie's still here, good. I'm not sure why it's important, and I just want to understand why it's important that the second phase of the Hildreth House be in a certain time frame. Because aren't we kind of moving towards a development and the whole?
Who knows how that's going to work, and there's the whole issue.
It'll work great. It's going to be great.
In Leo's land.
Yeah, exactly.
This little land of make-believe. No, I don't mean that. But one of the Friends also is.
How's that town hall looking?
It's looking, it's white
Next
on
time
the
you
outside.
flush your toilet in the center of town?
All right.
No, I forgot what you were asking about. The costing of the second phase, the timing of it. I think one of the challenges is early on with, and Connie, you could probably answer it much better than me or Deb. The notion was that the Friends of the COA was setting a target of trying to do some pretty aggressive fundraising. And I think if you're saying 8 years out, we're going to need this, that's really hard to get people excited
So it
about.
comes off the radar screen so people don't take it as seriously.
And I think when you're when you're doing phase 1 and people can see, and it's really, I think Ken was correct earlier, I think he was the one that said most of phase 1 is the parking, the site work, and accessibility to the second floor. It's not addressing the fact that they don't have adequate dining space and all that stuff.
Totally get it.
So I think when people see that much done, it's sort of like what you were saying about, boy, if we can make the town hall look, buttoned up and looking good, and we restore it, and we've got the space up top that people had said that they wanted to have, we've left it open, you realize, okay, we can accomplish things. And I think to have that same energy move forward with this population would be important. So I think, yes, if we don't know what other grants might be out there, yes, if we can do the housing and have that fold into it, absolutely. And all of those things can help bring down the ultimate cost of the town. But I think in the meantime, budgeting, I think you have to look at.
I'd like to make a suggestion, which is, these weren't meant to be random plugged-in numbers. We were going to look at the debt service, but the selectmen never really did vote on the DPW facility. And, the school committee has voted on the numbers in here. They didn't just appear out of the blue. There's a lot of question about what the K-wing is going to cost, and we're probably not going to know for another 9 to 12 months, assuming the state puts us in the
Awards that.
program when we go do the study. But we didn't do our part of figuring out what we put in for the DPW facility. We shouldn't let, a person, Debbie or whoever, just plug a number in. We should have that discussion, and we were going to hold off on the discussion until we saw this. So it's kind of late tonight. What I suggest is, at our next meeting, we've kind of seen this thing. We should weigh in on the DPW facility, what goes in there. We owe that to Rich. He's made a proposal. And on the Hildreth House, quite frankly, She's nice to put $1.5 million in here, because we voted not to fund 2.7, and we didn't say anything else. So I think we should bring that one back, and those two things, we should make a decision on where they go and the dollar amount for this exercise.
So would part of
So
it
they're not
be,
just numbers one person's making up.
so would part of it be where we would recommend a timing?
A timing, yes, a timing and an amount for both the DPW facility and Hildreth House Phase 2. I think we should look at them next time, now that we've all been exposed to the rising tide of debt. And the K-Wing, the other news on the K-Wing, it could be a lot more, depending on where the state comes from, so. They may ask us to do the whole building, for example. That was discussed at length at the capital committee on.
The whole HES.
Yes. And that would be a very big number, which changes all the dynamics.
Right.
And we're not even gonna know that for another 9 to 12 months.
So we really can't make a good decision
On the DPW or Hildreth House, I just.
Till we get something on
Well,
the,
you're not going to know for 9 months on the
You're
K-Wing.
not gonna know a lot of this out of your stuff. I suggest, next meeting, we just, now that we've thought about this, it's late tonight, just take each of those two things, decide where they should go in this plan for now, and revisit it next year, when we have a lot more information. These are out-of-year things.
so if put them in year 6 to 10, they're still on the radar. Then when you get more information, you can move them to the
We
left.
could do that, but we also need an amount. I mean, we just, I just think we need to do our part of this. The school committee's done their part, we need to do our part with the buildings that we're supposed to look at.
Leo, you're.
I'd like to see the Hildreth project in year 5. If it can go out to 6, put it at 5.
Well, what's year 5?
I don't know, but it was coming off, that's what Connie said. She didn't want it out past 5, and you said it would be hard to fundraise and so on, because,
Year 5 would be 21.
okay, because, just let me say why. Because in Leo land, momentum
have
is
it, yeah.
everything, right?
No, and I know there's a
actually
good idea
being
floating.
serious about things and wanting to get them done, so I think there's an opportunity to save the town, to do what we want to do, and to save the town.
But just make a motion right
A
now to
lot of
stick it
money.
in year 5 and move on.
So I just made that motion.
And how much would you like to put in year 5?
Can we put 2 in, hoping that it comes down? 2.5?
Their request was 2.7,
It's
and it's gonna escalate.
$2.5 million.
0.5, and with the assumption that some amazing thing has happened and we
Yeah.
get a lot of money from somewhere else, right?
Okay, so 2.5 in year 5. That's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
And year 5 is 2021, right?
Yes.
Correct. You want to go for it and get this out of the way, and also do the DPW facility while you're at it? They asked for $2.4 million.
Well, wait a second, before we go that. I think the DPW facility started as we have certain needs, and somehow the needs morphed into a new building. Quite frankly, I've lived in town for over 30 years, and when I moved here, there were 77 miles of public roads, and there's still 77 miles of public roads.
It's,
Okay, so I think what.
When did the roof collapse?
We need the DPW director to. We need the DPW director to list what he needs on the building, why he needs it, and what alternatives he has of things that he does not have, and similarly do the same thing for things that he declares are inadequate. And I think we take a look at that and say, are we gonna put up a new building, or are we gonna look at other alternatives? So I don't think putting it on the radar screen at the full price is the right thing to do.
I thought we had I had his stuff here. This is his operating. Maybe capital. Nope, H basin. Oh, where'd it go? I guess I don't.
Well, I move we put it at year 7, so 7 years out at 1.5 million.
Second.
I don't know.
Anybody discussion?
Absent, what did he request originally?
2.4, including the study to do it.
Right.
Well, that's.
2 was the construction, right?
2.25, actually.
And then what was the, you just recommended,
1.5.
so where do we make up the difference?
I have no idea.
Fundraising?
I'm just trying to put enough of a number in as a place, because at 7
Okay, you
years,
said
it's
year
truly a placeholder.
7, it would be,
It's just more comfortable putting it 6, or give them an extra year with the building.
Yeah.
Okay, so
It just says indication that there's a big number out there.
2023, I believe, and 1.5, you said?
Yes.
The 7 years out is 2023.
Sold.
okay.
So motion made, and who seconded?
I did.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we've killed that, we've killed item E and F. Can I get just a?
I move that we accept the resignation of Wendy
We
Eldridge.
have to agree.
I move that we extend our meeting to handle item G.
A second.
Do we need the executive session?
No,
Okay.
one more time. No. we'll put
Okay,
it off.
so I move we extend our meeting to deal with item G.
Second. I'd
All those
second
in
that.
favor?
Aye.
I move that we accept the resignation of Wendy Eldridge, thank her for her service, and wish her a speedy recovery.
Second.
Aye. Need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.